All right, everybody please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to this special session, which is in reality a regular session, but it's called a special day of the Rye Town Park Commission. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Killian?
Here.
Commissioner Pilla?
Here.
Commissioner Sack?
Here.
Commissioner Salanitro?
Here.
Commissioner Rosenberg?
Here.
Commissioner Zuckerman?
Here. Thank you. We have two sets of minutes of 12/20/2016 and 1/17/2017. The 12/20 minutes have been revised since the last meeting. If there are no further changes, may I have a motion and a second to accept both sets of minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Next item is a discussion and a possible resolution regarding the seawall.
Yes.
As everyone knows, this is a matter that's been dragging on for some time. Before us is a resolution to retain Dolph Rotfeld Engineering as the engineer for restoring the Rye Town part of the seawall, not the City of Rye part of the seawall. The City of Rye has previously, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Sack, determined to go in a different direction with the repair of the seawall that's located entirely in the City of Rye and for which the City of Rye is responsible. Before us is a resolution appointing Mr. Rotfeld, who previously had a contract, was actually with the City of Rye for both parts of the seawall, the part totally within the City of Rye and the part that is maintained by the Rye Town Park Commission. This contract has been rewritten. It's essentially the same contract, but it has been rewritten to make it clear that the work will be performed under the auspices of the Rye Town Park Commission. So I know that there will be a lot of discussion on this one. And let me have a motion and a second to approve the resolution, and then let us have discussion.
So the resolution is just to hire Dolph as the engineer. It's not to decide how to go about fixing the wall.
That is correct.
So shouldn't we have a discussion first?
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, many times we have a resolution, we have a motion, a second, and a discussion. If you want to discuss it first, is that the
Well, with the motion and the second brings it to the table
Yes.
for the
Correct.
the body to
Right.
discuss.
right? So may I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion, please.
So I am not in favor of completely tearing down the many, many feet of the wall that are still there to fix a 25-foot portion. So it just didn't make sense to me why we were going down that road. So I did a little more homework in the last week, just trying to understand why it's taken us so long and all the different things that have gone on. And it seems to me, and I probably will ask Ryan, because I think Ryan and Dolph are the only two that have been involved in this since the beginning, since we've had changes in city managers and changes at Rye Town, changes in city manager in Rye and changes at Rye Town and administration. We started down the road of just repairing the wall that's there, because I went and looked at it, and it just, I don't know how many, I mean, I know we've all been down there a lot, but when you actually go and look at the wall, there's plenty of lovely stone wall, some of which has to be repaired, and then there's an approximately 25-foot section, I may be wrong on how many feet, which was, I believe, the outlook part of the wall that got washed out. So I just am so struggling with, why do we need to take down all of this beautiful stone wall and put up reinforced concrete? I know people have said we could put stone on it, but I cannot possibly imagine how waves going up against the wall, that stone's not going to come down. And then we have our people that love to hang out on the beach and go to the park, and part of it is stone, and then we have this portion that's this ugly reinforced concrete. So I'm just completely struggling with that, particularly when this option will take longer, is more expensive, and is not as pretty, let's call it. So I think and Ryan can give more detail on this, when this process started, now I know that the city was lead agency, but I don't think we really ran the process. The reason we was because we had the staff. We have Ryan as an engineer. We had a staff, whereas Rye Town did not have the staff. But we started on the road of just repairing the wall and replacing in kind. And somewhere along the way, somebody got the idea, like, let's take it all down and put reinforced concrete up. And I think there is this mistaken impression that, one, that's what FEMA wants us to do, and they most certainly do not necessarily, and two, that somehow that's better and will last longer. And I don't think anyone's proven that, and there's a lot of people that feel completely differently. So it's just not making sense to me why we're going down this road and we're not just going to repair the stone, which we can get done quickly. The other, if we get into the issues of, well, let me back up a minute. When we added the reinforced concrete option into our FEMA application, they rejected that portion because that part of the FEMA money would not do that. And then we had to go and look for other money, which was some hazard mitigation money, which is a different pool of money. But if we, and I think that that eventually got to the point where we convinced them that, and they approved it conditionally, but it also has to go through, I think it's SHPO, the historical approval, which we may or may not get. Also has to go through BAR and RIE. If we just repair it in kind, we don't have to do any of that. So, Brian, I don't know if I did an adequate job of the history. It was kind of quick. Is there anything you can add to what I said to shed more light on this? I just worry we started going down this road because it's like, well, FEMA's going to pay for most of it, so let's like tear it all down and redo it. And we're still paying for 10%. And 10% of a really big number is still more than we're going to pay if we pay 10% of the much cheaper number of just repairing it in kind.
So Gary, if it's okay with you, we do have Ryan Coyne here.
I
He
know
is
that, I know
the
that you
city
brought.
engineer.
I know that you brought Ryan.
And
Come on, Ryan.
you know, we've essentially expressed the city's position that it's not necessary to tear down the wall and build it up again. But rather than have you all rely on our representation and our layperson's interpretation, we wanted to have our expert city engineer here. So, Ryan, thank you for
Before you
being
get on, Ryan, I just wanted to comment on one thing, Julie. The retaining DOLF doesn't necessarily mean that any one solution is what the appropriate solution would be.
I have
mean,
no
because
issue
we
with
don't-
that.
We
I'm
don't,
just,
we don't know what the end product would be. You're not going to know what the end suggested repair or renovation or reconstruction will be until we send somebody out there to do borings of the entire wall
But wait,
to see to see the status that it's in and to see if any of this is necessary. Right now, the FEMA, the last FEMA response that we had was a tentative approval for a $730,000 rebuild in kind. We're not suggesting that the reinforced concrete would be the ultimate solution. That's what has to be investigated, and you can't do that until you hire an engineer to do it.
so
That's-
I'm
that's the
confused. I
purpose.
thought we were way past that point because we spent like $45,000 on a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
how
I
are we
don't
4
really-
years into it now?
I
I thought
don't
we
know what
looked
the
at the options.
I don't know what the $45,000 really was spent on, but the fact is, we're looking at the Rye Town Park part of the seawall to go forward and get, hopefully by this summer, to get construction estimates for the various alternatives and to see which is the most practical in terms of both cost and efficiency. It may very well be that the end product will be closer to what you're suggesting, or it may well be a reinforced concrete wall. I'm not an engineer, and I certainly can't prejudge what that might be until we have somebody go out and really give us the numbers and the different specifications. So I'm sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
So Ryan, maybe you can explain what's been going on the last 4 years, and I'm sure Dolph can add to it.
Sure, I'll do my best. After Hurricane Sandy, FEMA did assess the wall. We had retained Dolph. It was proposed to FEMA to replace the wall in its entirety with reinforced concrete, stone-faced. FEMA was in a position at that time where they were only, the money to repair the work was only for in-kind materials. They categorically denied a reinforced concrete wall. They actually took Dolph's scope of work and modified it on their own to say use in-kind materials only. They modified the cost estimate. They approved 2 projects, one for Rye Town, one for the city, and we are on our way for repair of the wall with in-kind materials. At some point in time, soon after that, town staff had a meeting on other projects with FEMA and state representatives. They brought up the concept of a reinforced concrete wall. The FEMA representatives were not the FEMA representatives on the seawall portion. They were for other projects. And it was stated that we could apply for hazard mitigation funding to beef the wall up, which they may approve reinforced concrete. So we did so. However, FEMA's original approval was only for the repair of portions of the wall that were actually damaged. So what they suggested that we do is apply for what they call the 50% rule, which states that if more than 50% of the wall was damaged, you can apply to FEMA to replace 100% of the wall, so you can have one congruent wall. So the first, and then we were going to get to reinforced concrete. So the first step was apply for the 50% rule. That was approved. So now we have approval, $700-something thousand to replace the entire wall
In kind.
in kind.
Right.
So if we stop there, you would knock the wall down and build it back again, in essence. Within that time frame, we had Rye residents adjacent to our portion of the wall express concern about continued deterioration. So the city reinvestigated our portion of the wall and decided that repair, which coincidentally is what was originally approved by FEMA, is the best course of action. So that is how we got to the point where we are at a back to repair with in-kind materials for the city's portion. The town, I mean, I think you guys are welcome to do whatever scope of work you want to do. I don't know if it's my position to opine on it, but I do see a place for repair where repair is necessary and replace where replace is necessary.
Now, my view regarding the Rye City portion is the same as yours regarding the commission portion.
Correct.
Which is, you certainly have the absolute right and should do whatever you deem appropriate for the city of Rye's part. And as I said at the last meeting, and you just mentioned, you have considerations in the city of Rye that the commission does not, in terms of the residents who are immediately behind that seawall and are worried that it's going to fail and should be repaired immediately. So that's a consideration that the park doesn't have. And I understand your concerns and sympathize with them. But as far as the commission is concerned, and again, I agree with your outline, we do have approval for the approximately $730,000 replace in kind for the entire wall, which was changed from the earlier replace in kind part of the wall. I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows, that if you did a lesser repair, we'd get the 90% reimbursement that we would for what FEMA has approved. Nevertheless, it seems to me that
They approved it to begin with.
Pardon me?
They approved it to begin with.
No, no, I'm talking about if we change the scope again to be a lesser scope. I don't want to get into that, but the
Seems
fact
funny
is,
they wouldn't want to approve
the
a
fact
smaller
is-
project.
the fact is that, right now, in my mind, the question is whether replace in kind or to see if the project qualifies under the various criteria to do a reinforced concrete with a stone facing, which would alleviate your concern, Julie, in terms of the attractiveness, because the stone facing would look approximately like the replace in kind anyway. Dolph, do
But
you
how,
have any-
I think my issue is how, and I definitely have some questions for both of you on the engineering aspects of both walls. I don't know how just putting a stone face on a reinforced concrete wall is going to last.
I'm not
With
an
waves
engineer.
going up against it, it just, obviously, there's a portion that doesn't get the
I'm-
waves, but that just doesn't make sense to me.
We haven't been approved for it yet, so I think we need to investigate, and that's the purpose of the contract. Dolph, do you have anything to say? Would you like to comment?
Well, before he comes up, can I guess fundamentally that, and can I just ask you as an engineer, forgetting you're from Rye City, just, there are existing walls there of, I don't know if either of you know, how many feet is the entire wall? 300
Both
feet?
sections,
Yeah,
ours
ours and,
yeah,
Rye
great
City and
question.
Rye Town. About,
I
I
can
don't,
give you an exact number. I want to say it's 215 feet
Okay.
of town wall and 70 of city wall.
all right, so let's just say 300, around 300. The portion that is missing, I think, is around 25 feet, 30, no more than 30. So why are we tearing down 275 feet of wall to build back 25? Like that, that's
The
what I
damage
fundamentally
area?
am having trouble getting over when it's a wall that's been there 100 years. And I think that the portion that did come out is the overlook, which had the semicircle. Maybe that was built in a different way, and for some reason or another. I mean, one thing we've never talked, I don't know that an overlook makes sense anymore. I think when the ferries came up there, maybe that's why there was an overlook. Nobody's talked about whether or not that comes back or not. But there might be a reason why that section came out, but the rest of it's there. It's been there for almost 100 years. So
Julie, I agree. I think that's the
I
question.
just,
And I think
like,
the answer is it's
forgetting
because-
everything else, like, I just fundamentally can't get my brain around taking down so much wall when we could repair sections of that wall and put back the 25-foot section. So now that I've led you down a road, you can feel free to disagree with me, but, and I don't know the engineering behind a stone wall versus a concrete wall, but the wall was built that way. It's lasted there a long time. What would be the reason you would take it all down, or
Because people are handing out money for free, except it's not
Well,
really not money for free because
but-
we still have to pay 10%.
Joe, I don't think that's
So-
fair.
Well, that's in a nutshell. That's how we look at it, Gary. You may not want to agree with it, but that's how we see it.
My recollection of the history is the goal with the reapplication to FEMA was to have them approve the entire wall to be reinforced concrete. And in order to get to that point, we had to do this intermediate step of the 50-50 rule, which got us to the point of 100% of the wall in kind.
meaning 50% of it was damaged?
50% of we proved, Dolph's office proved that more than 50% of the wall, Rye City and Rye Town, was damaged. And through FEMA guidelines, we were able to say that we want to replace 100% of the wall. The first step was to have them approve that with in-kind materials, which has been done. The second step would have been to apply for hazard mitigation funding, if that even exists anymore, to have them approve 100% of the wall with reinforced concrete stone veneered. I can see the thought process behind 100% of the wall. If you wanted the reinforced concrete wall for the entire thing to be, that's why we got to where we are. If you stop today, where we're approved for 50% of the wall, or 100% of the wall with in-kind materials, I haven't studied Rye Town's portion, I don't plan to, But I don't fully see the nexus behind demolishing the first 150 feet of wall to rebuild it back with in-kind materials. It seems sound. I haven't done borings on the beach, but from the city side, maybe a minor repointing job and some repair to the capping, which is what was approved in the original PW, makes sense. So it's a long and roundabout way of trying to answer your question on why we would do what we do. All of that being said, I think the question of a stone veneered wall, the merits of it, is a question to be had.
Do we know it would even be approved? I can't imagine they would ever approve something for aesthetics. Do you know how many
I have
billions-
trouble imagining that.
Can't
I don't know
imagine.
what this group is, SHPO.
not,
When there's an
called to be recognized.
alternative, so, I mean, that's a whole other issue. If we decide to do reinforced concrete, whether or not we can actually end up doing it.
You know,
But then I know that you mentioned that we have a timing issue, but the reason that this sort of came up again with us is because the neighbors did bring it up, and then all of a sudden we started looking into it. Marcus was new, he's now been there a while, but it just sort of kind of fell by the wayside, and now it's come back. So since we have an option to fix it quickly, and we think it's the best option, we're going to do it. But we're not just doing it because of the neighbors. I mean, we probably should have done something 4 years ago.
Mr. Chair, while we're on this topic about the pointing and capping, may I just, through the chair, direct a question to Ryan? Nice to meet you, first of all. So so in your professional estimation, I recognize you haven't studied the Rye-Town portion, so ours could be totally different, and I would ask Dolph the same question. But you're saying that that a feasible alternative for you guys is to point it and cap it, and that would fix it and avoid the need to knock it down and build it back with in-kind. And by the way, in-kind means using in-kind material. So if it's lumber, you have to use lumber. If it's rock, you have to use the rock.
And will that be as strong going forward in the future as if you had knocked it down and rebuilt it with in-kind material, given the fact that we're going to have more storms like Sandy?
Right. So that's the question, right? The question that's been asked 1,000 times is which one's stronger?
In-kind may not be
Last-
good enough in general.
right.
My answer to that would be this: we're not dealing with known calculations whereby I would be able to state to you that a reinforced concrete wall or an in-kind material or a full replacement of in-kind materials is going to last 50 or 75 or 100 years. We're dealing with wave action, storm surges, debris wash up. Some of the boulders that are on the seaside of the wall, I believe, were washed up during Sandy from another location in Rye that battered against the wall, which caused some of the damage. Those types of occurrences are not, they're not static in nature, right? We're dealing with unknowns when we talk to storm surges. So I think one can make a valid argument that a reinforced concrete wall with a stone veneer is going to require as much repair to replace the stone veneer that gets washed out with the salt water and the wave action and the high tide and the low tide and the storm surges, as is a stone wall built with mortar.
Functionally, may I ask, Ryan, from an engineering perspective, functionally, what does that wall do? Is it just a storm surge suppressant, or is it holding up the earth behind it? Or both, or neither?
It is both.
Okay.
Why it's both, I can't answer. Why it's there 100 years ago, whether there was a ferry or not. I think you could theoretically eliminate Dearborn Avenue at that portion and expand the beach, and you wouldn't need the wall there either.
Like a revetment kind of, or
right.
dune, yeah.
It serves no
That would be
purpose
cool,
for.
actually.
It's not a vehicle traveled road. It's not a park where there is pedestrian access there, but it was a road at one time. I actually have a picture hanging on the wall in my office of a lined up row of Model Ts against the wall with everybody watching the beachgoers from the early 20s. So it clearly was a passive use of a road, but why it's there now or why it was there, I can't answer that.
Ryan, let me interject. I'd like to get down to the contract itself. Before we go any further, what is this retaining DRE engineering, what does that do? Task 1 is a conceptual design and investigation. The main part of that is that DRE will engage the services of a geotechnical engineer to provide any additional data necessary to obtain geotechnical information and reports for evaluation of the wall replacement. DRE will investigate with a structural engineer a detailed inspection of the existing foundations of the wall. Examine and explore design options, word options, for construction of a new wall. Once an option is accepted by the commission, a conceptual design layout and budget estimate will be prepared for approval by the commission. So basically, this contract says, let's go forward and see what is really needed here, because right now, everybody's just guessing. Nobody has done the geotechnical work or the structural work as yet to determine along the entire length of the wall what is necessary. And I submit that until that's done, we're just talking around in circles, and we're talking going in another 4 years. I'm not interested in going 4 years. I'm interested in getting this done and having this go out to bid next summer.
Mr. Chair?
But why, what have we been doing
do.
for 4 years? Isn't that
Yeah,
what,
respectfully.
I totally don't understand why we have to do more stuff. Haven't engineers
Said we
been
don't
looking at
have
the
a
wall for
clue
4 years?
Until we do this? But we got $42,000 of engineering invoices. What'd we do?
What? I,
I don't know what the conclusion is. That
But-
was done through, basically through the city, and
it was the city acting on behalf of the
Can we ask
town and the
Dolph?
city.
Yeah, why don't we ask Dolph?
So-
It's his work.
Dolph?
What'd we get for the $42,000, Dolph, and how much do we know, and don't we, about whether this wall can be pointed? A bunch of bills. Taxpayer money. So is the FEMA stuff, right?
Read the invoices, Dennis, and you see what was done. There was meetings.
Yeah,
with
but no, can you
FEMA.
tell me in 6 seconds, and the good people in the audience there, like, tell me in 6 seconds like I'm a 6-year-old.
But I
That would be-
think what Dennis meant to say, what was done for the money that we've already spent, that, or what wasn't done that we need to now do? Because I think most of us assume that when, you went out, and I know other engineers and structural engineers came out and contractors came out, there's a whole lot of people that have been to look at both walls. I thought we were at the point where we could decide how we were going forward. And then Gary seems to be suggesting it's almost like we're starting again. So what hasn't been done? I mean, boring, I saw bills, there was borings done or somewhere, although Ryan told me borings didn't need to be done, but let's not go there right now. So what hasn't happened in 4 years?
First of all, let me answer your question earlier.
Thanks.
You say a concrete wall. This is not really a concrete wall. It is a concrete core. And a 3-foot wide wall, a 12-inch concrete wall, leaving not veneer, but actual 12 inches of stone wall, pretty much the way it is now. You
So
wanna know
basically
spec-
what you're saying is that you're putting in a reinforced concrete core plus what we have now.
Yeah,
What's the upcharge to stone face it, Dolph? Do you know offhand?
It's not stone facing, Dennis.
it's not stone facing the type that you veneer.
Yeah, no, but
And it was
what's the upcharge for this veneer or what, this rock in the front?
What do you
How
mean?
much would we have to foot if FEMA didn't approve it? Order of magnitude, 10,000, 100?
Right now, I can't tell you. I'm not gonna
I
guess.
would imagine that's most of the cost of the wall, isn't it?
12 inches, how thick is the wall?
But you just said you seemingly have decided that's the best option, and we'll just
I
leave
have-
that at
I've
whether or
got-
not it is, but I think that's not, I think Gary's suggesting we're way, way before that, which I'm not understanding. You've just said, we don't know what we're gonna do, we need to go out and look at it and then make a decision, and you're now telling us, I think by what you're talking about the concrete wall, is that you think that's the best option.
No, I didn't. I'm explaining to you what it is.
Okay, thank you.
It's-
Okay.
It's not a concrete wall
Okay.
like the one that's at water's edge. That's a reinforced
Concrete
concrete
wall.
wall. I'm talking about a spine that isn't gonna bend or
Okay.
break from wave action. And the stone is there to make it look like it was. It's not gonna look any different.
Okay.
The cap on most of that wall is in bad shape. Now you say it's been there 100 years. There's a member of this board who asked me a question once about how long do you think this bulkhead would last? And I told him, 2 storms.
You mean the bulkhead? Are you talking about the bulkhead in Portchester?
Right. Right, Dennis? You asked that question.
Well,
I did.
And I said 2 storms and the second storm and it went.
It did.
how was that built?
It was totally
In
different.
bad ways.
Yeah, totally different.
It
So,
was built in a way that
Let
was
me
not
ask-
recommended by Dolph.
Yeah. How much action does this seawall, the storm surge suppressant part of it, actually get? I mean, the water would have to come a good way.
I would argue the Rice
Bang
City
it.
portion gets a lot worse than the side, because
But
the
does it,
Rice
like-
City is facing
You guys
directly
will
to
walk
sound.
the
The
dogs.
other
Is,
one's
like
on the
the beach
side.
always wet in the summer? Does it, do we rely on it daily or just when there's sandy? Nobody knows.
All right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I think he's
the wall
wondering how
portion.
much the waves are hitting up against the Rye Town parks. I mean, every day Rice City gets our portion
I
because
think-
it's
I think
facing.
Ryan,
Well, it's with the tide, yeah. No. Strike
Ryan,
that
I
from the
think
record, please. What am I saying? Yeah.
I
All
think
right,
Ryan,
Benny,
Ryan-
Benny, do you have anything to add, Benny?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate Ryan being here, and Dolph, thank you as well.
Can we answer the question of the wave? Brian has some very good pictures.
Yeah,
And
I was
these
going
waves
to
were
add to that.
quite high.
We had some video as well.
Also, your Dearborn Street Road is probably destroyed, gonna have to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take a lot of action to get bad. And if some of that road comes back, don't forget that wall facing on the beach side is practically 3 feet below the road grade to the bottom of the wall. And we don't know at this particular point, you know, nobody can predict how long it's gonna stay. Or another storm knock down a piece of the wall. The wall on your Rye wall, that corner where it meets, there's this much space between the bottom of the wall and the foundation, and 2 reinforcing rods that are supposed to be embedded at least 2 inches in concrete are exposed.
That's why we need to fix it.
Yeah, and you know
Well,
what?
I think we could
Just
maybe
taking
argue that
taking a trowel and
all
throwing
these
up-
years we probably should have
Let me
been
explain
better.
one thing. Learned a long time ago. Beware of bargains in used parachutes, dynamites, and economically cheap
bulkheads.
construction.
So I'll add,
I don't, just to respond to that, once we pick the option, I'm sure there's people that can give us cheap repair in kind and people that won't. So I don't disagree with you on that concept. It's just that you still haven't convinced me that we need to tear it all down and rebuild it when it's a wall that's been there 100 years. And maybe I'll say
When-
Rice
when
City
did-
should have been better
when-
about
when-
repairing
when-
it all the way along, and maybe
when-
it wouldn't be so bad today.
When did I say that?
Dolph, I don't think that we're doing anything on the cheap, meaning slapdash. I think what we're saying
I'm
is we
asking-
can get it done right for less money.
Yeah, but-
We're not doing something that's shoddy work. So if that, I hope that's not what you were suggesting when you talked about cheap parachutes, but I
used
think clearly
parachutes.
it's a it's a colorful analogy, but it's not apropos to what we're talking about. So we're not jeopardizing anything in repairing the wall the way we're doing it. So
I don't know what you're doing.
Ryan had the courtesy not to really comment on the Rye Town wall, but you're finding it necessary to comment on the Rye City wall. I think that's,
that was raised, listen, I think that was
What's
raised,
your question?
excuse me, wait, Dolph, please. Benny had the floor. Benny, please.
well, I wanted to comment that I lived through Sandy, and I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to visit many homes along the waterfront, the coastal areas. I actually was engaged as an engineer to do a full design and rebuild on a home in Larchmont that lost 100% of its wall, at least from its length, not its full height. And it was a stone wall. It had been patched over the years because, obviously you're dealing with salt water, and that's public enemy number one when you're dealing with stone walls and masonry. They don't get along. And I know the contractor that was out there a few weeks ago will attest to that. Many of these stone walls along these waterfronts were built loose, without mortar. And over the years, for whatever reason, mortar was added to it. And, the reason why the mortar was added to it was because they wanted to keep the water from infiltrating and washing out the soil behind it. Good intentions, poorly constructed, and the part tells the story. And the reason why I say the part tells the story is because when you see the damage, and there was damage throughout the waterfront, you react to that. As engineers, and I'm putting my engineering hat on, as engineers, we react to not being satisfied with putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. We want a new Humpty Dumpty because we don't want to experience the same problem. And the likelihood is that it will happen. There's, the Sandy was an event that coincidentally FEMA had developed new coastal erosion plans, recommended plans that were issued months after Sandy, not because of Sandy, but because there was a recognition that the tidal effects along the coastal areas were greater and more inland, and that protective measures needed to be taken. So we have enforcement regulations from FEMA with regards to how to build a home in a floodplain, and those regulations and those restrictions and those requirements have gotten stricter over the years, because what they don't want to see is what they call repetitive loss. We don't want to fix something for the sake of thinking it's right or believing it might be right, and then it gets damaged again. FEMA is not in the business of handing out money more than once. They shouldn't be. That's been my argument, on another side, wearing my municipal hat, that repetitive losses should be curtailed. And the only way to do that is to enforce the regulations that are on the books. Basements shouldn't be finished in floodplains. Homes should be raised and elevated. First floor should be protected, et cetera, et cetera. All the laws are in the books. So when we're dealing with a piece of property like a seawall, the same governing factors in my mind hold true. Those walls, I don't care if they've been there 1,000 years, they have experienced defects with wave run-up, with expulsions of other materials that float up, and those are known entities. And FEMA regulations say build to the satisfaction of the requirements that will prevent, in most likelihood, damage. Now, you're not just protecting the seawall, you're protecting what's behind the seawall. In the
So
case,
that's more than in kind, though. That's to the new code,
and
basically.
in kind is build a stone wall. It's a stone wall. In kind is build a stone wall. It's not take the stone that fell out of the wall and put it back. That's not building in kind. That's a temporary repair. I watched the meeting and I agree with what Dolph said. That's temporary repair, because for every action is a reaction. Your action is to put the stone that fell out of the wall back in the wall. You'll do what you can. The reaction to that, in my view, is that Mother Nature took it out once. It's probably going to take it out again. So the rebuilding of in kind, Dennis, is you can rebuild it as a stone wall. It's probably a 3-foot wide wall. It's got whatever features it's got. We don't have any design manuals or any plans that show how the wall was built, but we have a good estimation of what it was built.
Techniques at the time.
So you
sure.
want to rebuild it in kind, remove it all and rebuild it, because over the years things have been done to that wall. People have been chinked, stones are chinked in place. I'm just saying that FEMA also, through a nationwide permit, gave a 1-year ability for anybody who did have stone damage and stone and wall damage to build 1 foot higher without a permit. So you could build higher, because the recognition was on the revised FEMA plans, on the coastal plans, was that the water was coming higher. The water levels are rising.
Sea level rise. By 2030, they
Well,
expect it to
and one of the
fall.
things that a lot of
As
people
early
weren't
as
designing
2030.
for was that wave run-up. When you think about the wave crashing against the wall, look at the energy it's dissipating. And a lot of times, because of the nor'easter that Sandy, it actually, when it came over the wall, its own action of turbulence, if you will, it actually took with it the soil behind the wall, all of that. I mean, I saw some devastation, and I think everybody in this room and the audience that's watching probably remembered the devastation that Sandy prevailed with. So the engineering hat, in my view, is rebuild in kind. You can do that, but rebuilding in kind to me is removing the wall either way. Rebuild better. I'm a fan of reinforced concrete. You can do different things in terms of making it pleasing, in terms of maybe some form work in there and making it look like stone. It doesn't have to be stone, but that's a cosmetic thing. I'm looking at it from when Sandy 2 comes.
And it will.
And it will. When Sandy 2 comes, do you want to be back at this podium talking about what should we do next? FEMA's money is an opportunity to do something better than you have today, in my viewpoint. It's not free money. They recognize, in my viewpoint, they recognize that you had a casualty. You have an entitlement to fix it. Choose how you want to fix it. Make the right choice, because I think that the federal government has been subsidizing losses. And at some point in time, maybe 20, 30 years from now, FEMA will not exist to hand out money to repair something any longer, because,
It may not happen 4 years from now.
well, my thing is, we have a golden opportunity to really, first we need to study. Some of the geotechnical work has been done, Dolph. I see that in your old invoices.
Yes.
So we should have some framework. And I think what the commentary that Dennis and the other members are is that we're not interested in wasting money on engineering studies. We're interested in getting solutions. We want to get past this point. My voice is just, we can fix it, and we can deal with the ramifications of Sandy 2, or we could really take an aggressive posture for the betterment of the future and do something else. I've had the luxury of talking with homeowners who had to make those choices. They didn't have FEMA grants or other grants, and what I'm just trying to say is that seawalls are a dangerous entity, and the catastrophic failures of those through storm events are ugly. And we lived through it already. And the other thing is that since it's been 4 years, I'm concerned about all of that wave action that has happened in the last 4 years with these voids in the wall. I don't know whether it's easy to tell or not to tell whether there's other damage. And I know one of the residents came at the last meeting from the area, was concerned about the void growing. And so obviously as the tides go back and forth, and they have regularly for the last 4 years, with it, there might be some deposits of soil or whatever is behind that wall that's been dislodged. So,
Not getting any better.
I hope I answered some of the questions, Julie.
Do we have anything further?
I'm not,
Pete?
Okay, yes,
again,
so now I'm still confused at, assuming we want to hire Dolph, why, I'm not even sure why we have to do this contract. I feel like he's already been hired. We've spent $42,000, $12,000 of it just in the last month. Like, aren't we at the point where
Yeah.
we can say, these are the 3 options or the 2 options or whatever it is, and let's go?
we
Like, I don't
haven't-
get, it's like we're going back. So
we
that's what I'm
haven't- we
struggling
haven't
with at the
hired
moment.
Dolph. The commission hasn't hired Dolph. There's a contract originally.
All right, well,
that
that's
was
a
with
little
the
bit
City
of
Rye.
maneuvering but he has in the past been hired on behalf of Rye Town and Rye City. Because we're sort of splitting off now, doesn't mean all that goes away and we're starting at 0.
No, I agree. I think,
Like,
No, but we
I'm
still need a
struggling with that. We
contract.
spent $12,000 in the last 6 weeks.
We still need a contract between the commission.
I'm sorry, the bills, or I don't know the time period of those bills,
The
sorry.
the bills all show as to what time frame is on the third line underneath the ray. It shows week ending something to week ending
Right,
something.
respectfully, I think, getting past all of the other stuff we talked about, the thing is, we need to move forward. And the choices obviously would be voted on, but we don't need to spend more than we need to on engineering. That's
No,
the voice.
and-
And I'd like to go back to what has been done at some point, not here tonight, but if things have been done and paid for that can be used to advance the project, obviously we need to audit that we don't pay for something more than once. That's
No,
the case.
and you don't, and I think you've known me for,
Yeah, and it's not
2
it's
years.
not a question of that, it's a question of satisfaction that,
somebody might say, to the
Yeah.
point that I had before, beware of used parachutes,
No,
dynamite,
no.
and cheap engineering.
engineers aren't
services.
cheap. We get that, and I know that. And
So this is not a fixed bid proposal, though. This is a time.
Yeah, so what do
I
we,
guess the question, Dolph, is what about this proposal and this contract will be different? How is this moving us forward from where we are right now?
How is moving
We
you
don't
forward?
have
is-
We
a
need to get-
contract with him. The commission does not have a contract with Dolph Rotfeld. The city of Rye has determined to go in a different direction, which is its right to do. But we do not have a contract with Dolph that will enable us to pay Dolph. We cannot pay unless we have a contract. Now, I know that money was paid in the past, and I believe a lot of that was paid by the city of Rye.
Well,
and not-
we'll end up splitting it, but yeah.
And at some point, we'll have to sit down and decide how that money should have been allocated to which part and go accordingly. But right now, we need a contract between the Rye-Town Park Commission and Dolph Rotfeld Engineering to go forward on this town commission part of the wall.
But I don't understand the numbers in it because it's basically the exact same contract
It's a
with a
contract.
slightly, it's the same contract that was originally signed with just a lower number for conceptual design and investigation, but that original number was 16,000, I believe, but we've spent 42. So
Most of that was in things with FEMA, meetings with the city of Rye, meetings
I'm
with
sure it was
FEMA and the
a
city
lot of
of
stuff,
Rye.
but
There was a lot of
your
stuff
point
that
is-
was done.
The estimates usually are higher.
this
I
isn't
mean,
even,
The
I-
reality is usually
the
higher.
first
than
one wasn't even close to what ended up happening, and I, obviously, you know, we could be changing our mind, that's not your fault, you do what we tell you, but, or respond to decisions made, but
I have a question.
we,
Gary,
I-
if the commission were to approve this contract tonight, will it build on the work that's been done for the
Yeah, whatever.
$42,000, or are we?
like, most of that work was done on,
Wait.
City
It's
done.
not going to build on the work that was done with meetings with FEMA and Departmental of DEC, Environmental Conservation,
I
and
understand that-
anything else.
why?
Because that was already done. You're not going to have to do that
But
again.
they're not going to have to be. My
That's
point is,
done, done.
It's done.
Yeah.
We're not
Done.
going to ever.
We're not gonna have to do that
Go
again.
back
Right.
and do that again.
Right.
Correct.
Right. Whatever engineering studies were done that do not have to be duplicated are not going to be duplicated.
I have a question for Dolph. So Dolph, you did the studies, you did the work that you had to do to get it approved for FEMA, and that is fantastic. What will be different now for moving forward? Because there obviously had to be engineering work, and I know it's all in the invoices, but there was work that was done for FEMA. That's all in the books now. It got us approved for 100% of the wall in kind with a 10% match from the Parks Commission. Whatever the city of Rye decides to do, that's their choice. Joe and Julie, they're the fiduciaries, that's their responsibility. My responsibility, and the rest of us here, to the park, and they are as well. And I think that everybody is trying to do what's best for the park in the quickest amount of time. What would we do moving forward now at this point in time?
Number one, to do a detailed evaluation of what foundations exist on the existing walls. If we take the wall down or we build a reinforced concrete core wall with the stone, we have to check what the foundations are, what there are. We not done any digging around. We intend to do some digging out there to see what the foundations are as to whether they are in good shape and can continue to carry the walls.
Would it be fair to say that the work that was done to get the FEMA application grant approved is not as, it got it approved, but it wasn't as detailed in the analysis as it would need to be if you were actually going to start doing the work?
That's correct.
Yeah,
As far as
review,
the- as far as-
discuss,
Do you-
project. It's not real engineering work.
Do we need to do that
Some of it is,
for us to decide which of the three options we're going to take?
Geotechnical engineering, I mean, right, yeah.
So
Like, I get how you would have to go that far when you're deciding, we're picking X option and we're going down the road of that,
like we're
but,
approving that at this point in time. It's just.
no, I think we're not, but what I'm saying,
We're not approving anything except entering into a contract for Dolph to do the appropriate work so that we can come back, hopefully in the late spring or early summer, to say, this is the option that we are choosing, whether it's replace in kind, whether it's reinforced concrete or anything else, and say, okay, this is the option. Let's put construction drawings together.
See, this is where I'm lost now, because I am almost 100% confident that the discussion that we had previously had on this commission is that we were already approved for construction in kind, reconstruction in kind,
Yes.
okay? There had to have been some engineering work to get to that point.
Right.
And I'm also 100% of the belief that the proposal from Dolph was to proceed with an application to FEMA to do more than just a replacement in kind, but to do replacement with reinforced concrete. So in my view, the decision has already been made. So whatever work you're doing now is in furtherance of the decision to proceed in that direction. It's not, oh, let's figure out which way we're going to go. That decision has been made, and that's what this is all for. So I
I
think
mean,
it's kind of a
he's right, it's the
charade.
road they've been going down, like it or not. That's the road that they've been going down for months now.
It's kind of a charade
So-
to pretend that we're still unsure as to which direction we're taking. I mean, you know,
But we
if you're
can't-
going to go in a certain direction, just admit that that's the direction you're
We
going.
can't do the
Don't pretend otherwise.
We can't do the reinforced concrete wall and get it approved by FEMA unless it comes in at less than the cost of the in-kind replacement, or there's another reason that FEMA will approve increased funds. Am I correct with that, Dolph?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the decision that has to be made. What will it cost to do each of them?
Well, this is what.
But
this
didn't we
is
have
what-
to put that in our FEMA application? What the reinforced concrete wall, if we got,
That was the revised
But it's
one.
gonna cost more, right? You don't need to do geotechnicals to figure that one
I'm
out.
thinking that it's gonna probably cost more, Dolph, to go with the reinforced concrete than the
Yeah,
rebuild.
we're not doing a design on that. We're going to be looking at what the conditions are as far as foundation is concerned, okay? I'm not gonna do a reinforced concrete wall if I gotta go 14 feet.
But
to
the
get
economics
into
of the
front or
grant and the
something.
10% may not be. It doesn't sound like it's a sure bet at
You
all.
might wanna do the gravity wall, because for obvious reasons for the geotech, but the thing is, even if you'll develop a cost estimate, but that cost estimate will still be unknown until we go out to bid. You follow what I'm saying? So FEMA's gonna authorize that scope
Well,
of work,
the one
but we don't
thing-
really
the
know.
one thing that is, and this is something that we have to sort of make a decision on, early on, that's what this initial thing is. If you go with a reinforced
Wall.
core wall, you've gotta go back to FEMA,
Sure.
okay, number one. And then you've gotta go back to SHPO. Okay?
That's $20,000 right there, right?
No, that's not
No, they
any
may say
money,
no.
Dennis, that's just
10?
time.
It's time.
Yeah, no, I know, but time is money, right? At $120
and
an
the
hour, whatever it
Rye
is. Yeah.
City Board
I
of
don't mean that
Architectural
disrespectfully to
Review, let
anybody.
me add that
Well,
on.
also, we need the environmental specialist to be involved as well,
Well,
right? 'Cause
the
we're
one
dealing with
thing,
coastal.
and that's
Right.
being
assessment.
done right now.
Beth Evans is working now.
Evans
But
is
Benny,
working on
Benny,
that now.
so we applied to FEMA for permission
Correct.
to tear down the wall and rebuild it in kind. Okay, there had to have been some engineering done in connection with that
Yes.
application.
Agree with that.
So
Yeah,
why
I
do we
agree.
need to do even more studying to make the further decision that instead of just replacing in kind, we're going to replace it, but with just reinforced concrete? Why are we spending more money
The
to
question
make
is-
that decision?
Well, there's two
You know,
parts to that, I think, and then,
You're,
as
you're
I
spending, you're
understand-
spending possibly a small amount of money, but also remember one thing. All of this investigative work was 4 years ago. And you think
The
nothing has
Fe-
happened
Fe-
in 4 years?
FEMA-
You'd be sadly mistaken, Mr. Sack.
FEMA did not want to engage in betterments in terms of if you were going to repair a defect, you had to repair it in kind. They were not reimbursing through the DSRs betterments. You would have to pick up the
Except for
betterment.
the 1 foot.
Well, they get, obviously you can elevate, but if you wanted to go, let's say if it was a wood fence and you wanted to put a wrought iron fence, they would only, like your insurance company, going to pay you for that in-kind replacement. We went with the simplest approach, and I recall that these discussions were had, the replacement in kind, which is totally rip it down and rebuild it, and that met with FEMA. Supposedly, apparently, there's discussion with FEMA that they're willing to entertain, by numbers only, by cost only, a betterment, provided that
The
value,
hazard mitigation
that
pool
well,
of funds.
Well, the value of the reinforced concrete wall would have to fall in line with the value of the reconstruction estimate.
Which is not.
Well, we can assume it's not, but if there's a likelihood that the cost would be equivalent, what we're now saying, or what has been discussed, is that the reinforced concrete design or wall would actually be better than the reconstruction option. And if FEMA is willing to pay for that as an equivalent cost, we should consider it. But the jury's out because we don't have the full geotechnical to make that evaluation. Now, we can short-circuit that whole thing and say, just stay with the reconstruction.
But
We have that
if
approved
we
already.
spend all this money, let's just say we decide to do that, we spend all this money, then we have to get SHPO to approve it. They may say no, then all that money's down the drain.
Right.
It also adds a lot of time onto it.
Right.
Then we have to go to the Rice City Board of Architectural Review.
The
I
easiest
just think
thing
it's
easiest thing
it's
right now
entirely
is to
possible
just-
SHPO will say no.
One at a time, please.
The easiest thing right now would be to go what's already been approved, which is the reconstructed, the reconstruction of the wall. Rip it down and rebuild it with some sound engineering
Mr. Chair?
practices.
Dennis.
That's the easiest.
First of all, I want to thank actually everybody for this discussion, but Benny, you brought to light, Mr. Salanitro brought to light something that I think is a critical part of the decision here. It's whether or not the walls, it's all about that 1 foot higher.
We can go
Right,
higher.
and forget about the construction technique, whether it's concrete or stone or whatever, although SHPO is the State Historic Preservation,
Office.
right? So if it looks ugly, they probably won't approve it, right? And if it costs more to make it pretty, FEMA probably will not approve it. So if we're in venturing down this road to replace the wall, which Benny has me pretty much convinced, it smells like it's going to be a lot more than the 10%. And also,
it is.
engineering is a discovery process. These numbers smell low, so people just need to recognize that, you know, what you're getting into. Having the wall a foot higher, I think, is significant, because Sandy's,
I don't know if it's still, I don't know if that offer's still on the
Well,
table
that's
with the
material.
nationwide
That's-
permit.
that's
You
key
know,
then.
but the rebuilding of it, the
It's
reconstruction
almost
of
a
it.
no-brainer if they're going
Yeah.
to pay for the extra foot. If they're not, the key question that I would have is, you know, are we building it for 50 years, a need for 50 years from now?
Well, it's
And, you know, between sea level rise and climate change and the intensity of the storms, et cetera, right?
yeah,
it's changing.
The wall height is still well below base
Can
flood.
I make a suggestion?
Below base flood.
We're not going to decide tonight what's going to be built exactly. I would like to retain Dolph Rotfeld Engineering, get the contract under our belt, and I'd like to set up a meeting with Dolph, Benny,
Yes, I'm here.
perhaps Ryan, if you'd like to be included, and go over the commission part of the seawall and determine what the different alternatives are that we should go forward with, and get this done with a view towards getting approval by sometime this summer and construction underway. The 4 years is 3 years too long as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, if you look through the bills, though, there's a tremendous, even just last year, forget 2016, there's tons of looking and meeting, site meeting with FEMA, blah, blah, all, you know. So.
But it seems to me
like,
that that was all
put-
to get the grant approved, right?
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
Answering
We need to
questions.
get the engineering done, and
Well, that's why and that's
So what is,
that's
I don't
why-
understand, so what is,
That's why I asked Dolph, that, all of this seems to me that it's engineering, but with the sole purpose of getting the grant approved. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's enough engineering to actually do anything,
clearly not.
even now that they've approved.
Well, there
the
had to have
grant.
been enough engineering to get approval to tear down the wall and build it in kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so
they've approved.
so why do we have to spend more money to figure out that we want to rebuild it in a different way?
But both you mayors are right, you know, and I think it's important, time-wise. We already have FEMA's blessing to proceed with the reconstructed wall, yes or no?
Yes.
We also have FEMA's reconsideration of an other option, provided that we prove to them that the value, the cost for that other option will be in line with what they've already approved.
Yes.
Okay. Do we want to waste the time to go to the reinforced option, or do we can just proceed with going with what's already been already approved? That's
What-
really the question.
What is the timeline to go to FEMA, talk to them about the reinforced concrete option, together with whatever engineering studies need to accompany that,
Just go with,
What is the timeline? Is that another year? Is that 6 months? Is that 3 months?
The way I've looked at it, the investigation and conceptual design, either way, about 6 weeks. 2 weeks decision meeting with, there's somebody missing. There's 7 on the board?
Yeah,
Nope.
No, it's just 6.
6, actually, it's not a number, yeah.
Who breaks the tie?
We always agree. Actually, that's not
We
true.
are
but-
all unanimous all the time.
Oh, okay. 6 weeks after the decision by the board, 6 weeks
Lost
to
my
prepare a
attention span.
design. If it's a reinforced concrete wall core, approval from FEMA would take about 10 weeks, then SHPO about 10 weeks. If we go with the as-is, we go directly to preparing bid documents. And that would be about 16 weeks to go out to bid.
How much do you estimate?
The difference is 20 weeks between one and the other.
We got to add the Rye City Board of Architecture
lot of
review in there
not, and not
too.
knowing.
And
What?
yeah,
The Rye City Board of Architecture review would have to approve.
Something architectural involved, if it's the same wall?
I thought you were talking about the additional time if it's a concrete wall.
I
Yes,
talked
20 weeks.
about both.
yeah, he said it was 20 weeks more if we did
More
the concrete,
Right.
and there's
So
all
20
that
plus,
uncertainty, right?
and my point is 20 plus,
At the same
yeah,
price.
22, let's say, I don't know.
If it was
they
replacing it
approve
in
it.
kind, do they go to the BAR?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. So replacing it in
So,
kind.
so
means
how
you get it a
much,
foot higher?
how much, so it's a little bit of a gamble there. How much
Right?
would it cost approximately for your services if we decide that
Much easier.
That's
we
in the
wanna go down-
proposal.
It's easier and guaranteed you get it approved.
$7,500?
That's the conceptual part.
Absolutely.
The design part is the second phase.
So,
In the proposal, both numbers are there.
no, I'm looking at them. So the design,
Or the reconstruction.
that's not design after we make a final decision, or it just, the numbers don't seem to add up with how much we've already spent. That's why I'm confused. And maybe because we've made you go down so many roads. I don't know. So to get us to the point, it would be 29 plus 7.5
All right.
to go down this road. If we decided today to go right to the bid documents, if we did the replace in kind, what happens to those numbers?
The numbers are there as to what it would be.
All right. I'd like, we don't have to make a decision on whether we're going to go to reinforced concrete or replace in kind, but I would like to approve Dolph's contract, if we could take a vote on that. And I think that, Dolph, what I'm hearing is, I think that there's a lot of talk about, let's just get the replace in kind done and forget about the other one.
Yeah,
But we
Mr.
can
Chair.
have-
So
we
that would
can have-
affect,
We don't have to make a decision, we can have
Do,
further
because
well, it's the
discussion
scope
on
of the
that.
contract.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it's the
scope,
But
scope
I'm
of the
confused
contract.
on, he just said to me in my question, the contract's the same either way, whether we decide right now to go to bid documents or we go down the third road.
I agree
So
with you,
that,
Julie.
but how,
We
but
approve it.
how is
What-
that,
he
how is that
leaves
gonna be the same
with
amount of
marching
money?
orders to do what?
Design
Right?
specs.
Right now, his proposal is to drum up options, right? It sounds like
Yeah, we-
there's a consensus
waste
to,
time?
why waste the time and everything, and you got the bird in hand, just do the documents. As an aside, I'm getting melancholic as I end my 4th term as mayor, and I'm not running again, right? And I have to tell you, sitting here in the perch and seeing out there, it's just been such a wonderful experience. I wish there were thought bubbles over each of your heads,
Oh, I know.
though.
That would be
As I'm hearing the
classic.
discussion and looking at the looks, I wish you all could see at home, could see what we get to see. It's
So-
priceless. And thank you, by the way, for those looks. It guides me a lot.
I'm personally of the opinion that we have exhausted a lot of time with FEMA. I think we are, for all intents and purposes, engineered out. We have a approval of a rehabilitation reconstruction of the existing wall. I know it's a substantial wall, and rocks will outlast concrete a lot longer. I'm very comfortable with the reconstruction option that's already been approved by FEMA, and I would love the opportunity for Dolph to be engaged to at least prepare plans
Design
and
it.
specs and go out to bid and
To
get
what
get
height?
it going.
How do we
So
know about
if we-
this 1 foot
Well,
thing?
we gotta go back to, if we already filed under the old
I think-
nationwide
what the
permit,
heck?
if we can go a little higher, it'd be great. I mean,
What about, just remember, we go right into the Rice City Wall.
well,
not
I
to
mean, obviously,
complicate
your
matters.
wall will look the same because, you'll be repairing it, but, the
then it's
reconstruction
gonna-
concept, well, we can build yours higher. It's still under the same nationwide permit if they allow it.
We have a motion and a second, with the understanding that the engineering work will go forward with replace in kind and any other necessary modifications, such as raising the height, that may be approved. May I have a roll call?
So I'm sorry. So do the number, I'm so confused on the numbers that are on here. So can someone help me with that?
Numbers of what? For the,
Phase one won't be included because phase one's already
Right.
done. So I think you only go into phase two, which would be the construction documents would be the cost that we would be incurred in,
The final design.
final design.
but plus additional geotechnical
So-
engineering, yeah,
Technical one already done.
yeah.
So I'm just trying to decide what I'm obligating us to if we agree to this.
Design specs.
Just task 3?
No, test three is.
If we've
CA. I
decided,
think it's
task 2?
two. No, the instructions would be on the vote, the proposed vote, would be to engage your firm to prepare design documents for bidding purposes. That's, I think,
In kind.
for what's already been approved by FEMA. I think that's task 2. Can you confirm that that's task 2?
Correct. Right, conceptual design and investigation was task 1, task
And
2, final design.
and construction administration.
Right. If we want the CA, that's an hourly basis.
So do we need to change the contract? Or
Whatever we don't use, we don't pay for. So
Okay,
if
just-
task 1 is not being done, we don't pay for task
Well, you may
1.
have some things to do in there in the investigation part. You don't have the full realm. I think part 1 was like $7,500.
Right.
Big
Something you
amount
need to
of
do that.
money. I would say, without having to do the 2 option study, you can probably cut $2,500 off that.
Okay.
2,500?
Do you want to do is to circulate a new contract and authorize Gary to sign the contract upon circulation of the new contract, or do you want to wait for the next meeting to vote on it?
Why do we need to even do that?
Just to authorize, if the resolution is to authorize the commission to enter an agreement with DRE, then, if he needs to modify his numbers, I don't want to do that now. I don't want to negotiate the contract here.
right.
But it sounds like it's only a $2,500 difference. I mean, that seems extremely insignificant.
Well, they're doing geotechnicals in
You know
task
what?
1. They're doing borings.
I think maybe you should get another engineer for this.
Just understand, we are stewards of taxpayer money. And I take that seriously, and someone yelled at me last time for saying that. But I hope that we all do. So, you have to understand our perspective. We're frustrated. We're trying to figure out what's gone on. We're trying to make the
You're
best decision.
frustrated?
Oh, I'm sure you are, but we've also paid you $42,000. So
Can we negotiate?
I don't mean to.
That's what
We're
it
not
is.
No,
negotiating. I-
that's not fair. That's not fair.
Julie, please. Dolph, please. Dolph, please. We have a motion and a second for engineering services. The understanding is that the engineering services will be for the replace in kind and whatever is necessary to do that. If that should change, then we'll have that discussion. But basically, we want to go forward.
Who's
Yeah.
going to call about this 1 foot thing? Because that's mission creep.
We can verify that tomorrow.
Can we,
That's a phone call.
Okay.
So the
Debbie,
resolution
please
has to
call
be-
the roll.
But the resolution has to be modified.
Wait, time, You,
Gary, the
I hear
resolution
a
has to
motion
be-
to amend
Yeah, well, I
on
mean,
the
only
table.
because
What?
the whereas the design will consist of conceptual design and investigation phase.
Fifth whereas.
Yeah, the fifth whereas, that should be, whereas the design will,
I can't even find the resolution.
Page
Do you have the
32.
resolution?
Is that the right one?
What you want to do is perhaps strike out the clause, conceptual design.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, include the construction.
Yeah, we're basically signing them up for task 2, which includes additional geotechnical because it's not being done in the conceptual stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, for the.
That's not what it sounded like to me. It sounded to, Dolph,
Place in kind.
is there any part of task 1 that we still need to do?
You add so much value, Benny.
I don't
I
have
forget
any
what
value.
test one
I think
was.
Conceptual design and
We
investigation.
don't need that no more.
Conceptual design, yes, there will be a conceptual design that you can look at very, very
It'd be
simply.
one option, though.
But there's work to go out there and check the foundation, whether it was checked completely before. Remember, the borings that were done, the 3 borings were done, one of them was in the middle of the street.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was on the street side, on the sidewalk, on the grass between the sidewalk and the wall near the corner. And the other one was done west of where the lookout was. We have to get in there and take a look
Okay.
at what's on the beach side, which means digging out in there, seeing what the foundation is, because I'm not going to take a wall down and come back and there's no foundation to speak of.
I don't think we need to change the resolution. I think we
Actually,
understand what we're doing, okay?
We came with
As-
something simple, actually. In that fifth whereas,
I think
keep
Jeff looked at it.
Yeah, keep everything the same, and basically on the second, right, the design will consist of conceptual and investigation phase. The final design phase, we could just insert for the replacement in kind
Yes,
approach.
certainly.
That's
Right, so
fine.
insert as the fourth word in the second line of the fifth whereas for a replacement design approach, or replacement in kind, whatever the technical term.
Good wording.
That you guys agree on. And then, are we signing him up necessarily for the construction administration, or is that something we should leave out till after?
I don't think it matters, given the fact that we haven't decided if we're doing it yet.
Right. Well, we
We're
have to still
doing
go out to bid.
something.
We gotta go out to bid. Yeah, the
We're
CA
going
could
out
be
to bid.
discussed at a
We're
later
so
date.
far away
But
from
we're not
that.
signing him up for that necessarily? That's a legal.
It's a reimbursement on an annually basis. So if you
Exactly.
don't use them, then you
If
don't
we
pay
don't
for
do it,
it.
we
use
don't do it.
If you don't use it, you don't pay for it.
Right.
But we're not, well, we may need it, I mean, right? I just want to know if we have pricing.
Unless you want
Pricing it.
We do have
Dennis,
pricing.
Dennis.
No, I mean pricing
Dennis,
options.
you're not going to be busy next
You can
month.
do
You
that
can do
for us.
that.
I'm not
We'll
qualified.
do the roll call on that.
All right, no, this is good.
All right, please call the roll, Debbie.
Commissioner Killian,
Since I feel like I still don't understand, I'm voting no.
Commissioner Pilla,
As amended, yes.
Commissioner Sack,
No.
Commissioner Salanitro,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuckerman.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dolph. Thank you, Ryan.
And I want to thank Julie and Benny, the Commissioners Killian and
The two
Salanitro.
bookends, the two
Yeah,
bookends.
for leading the discussion. I mean, in addition to the chair, of
Right.
course.
Two
Thanks,
engineers.
Ryan.
But no, you guys added a tremendous
Thank
amount
you,
of
Ryan.
value, Julie and Benny.
Thank
And-
you.
And you too, Ryan and Dolph.
Thanks,
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming, Ryan. Thank you for
Thanks,
coming,
guys.
Dolph.
I think that was an excellent discussion. I know that there was some heat in there, but I think that's good for all of us.
Trying to see if
the
the thought
next
bubbles
item,
look any different.
moving right along, we now have an update regarding the short-term restaurant and snack bar license and a possible executive session regarding contract negotiations. Is it the pleasure of the commission to go into executive session and discuss the status of contract negotiations, or to first get our update on the restaurant and snack bar license?
Let's get an update.
Yeah,
Okay.
public's fine.
All right. We have with us, Brooke, what's your last name? Botwinick. Okay.
Wait, can I, do we,
E.
oh, well, she has to be, I'm just saying, there's a whole lot of, I guess everyone wants to stay for all this. If we're gonna leave and then come
Well,
back.
we're just gonna, hopefully it won't be too long.
Okay.
And there's nothing that says we can't talk in public. We
The,
just won't
the,
negotiate.
the short-term restaurant and snack bar license, last meeting, we spoke about our committee, Mr. Gold, Julie, Dennis, and Dan Tartaglia and Debbie met with, I keep forgetting, JGR, correct? JGL Consultants. Tracy Lawler. Tracy is not here this evening. She's in Boston, I believe. And Brooke is here in her place. Brooke, do you want to just take us through what the process was? And Russ, if you'd like to comment on it, or Dennis, Julie, as we go through it. Come on up to the microphone.
So great. Hello.
Hello.
Again, Brooke Botwinick with JGL Food Service Consultants. And I'll just give you a little bit of background on us very quickly, and also then on just the process overview of how we handled everything. So JGL is a food service consultancy that was founded in 1983. We've worked with over 125 organizations nationwide in varying phases of development. And our services typically include market and feasibility studies, operational analysis, RFPs, subsidy reduction strategies, contract compliance and negotiation, earned income enhancement, food service concept design and development. Some of our notable clients in the New York area include the American Museum of Natural History, Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, Carnegie Hall, and we worked with Federal Hall with the National Park Service. Our process overview for this project was we were retained by Rye-Town Park Commission in January to help facilitate the short-term selection process for restaurant and concession operation at Rye-Town Park. There were 13 companies that had submitted letters of intent to participate in the selection process. And after careful consideration and detailed research of each of the companies, JGL and the committee felt that it was best to focus on those companies that intended to serve both the restaurant and the concession, as opposed to just doing one element, as this is a short-term solution. The list of companies was then shrunk to 5 after we looked at those candidates that fit that criteria. Then one of the bidders actually withdrew from the round of the short-term process, which then left us with 4 prospective operators. JGL prepared questions for each company as well as a financial spreadsheet that we'd asked each to complete. We then arranged a day of meetings to interview each individual group. One of the bidders that we had met with at the time also pulled out as their financial investment required a longer contract term. Of the 3 candidates that were left, Homestyle was unanimously thought of as the best candidate to proceed with. Al Schifatelli, owner of Homestyle Catering, was incredibly impressive. His financial offer was strong, his openness to working with the park as a partner was refreshing, and his vision for the short-term project was appropriate, focused, and right on target. We called all of Al's references following this meeting, and I have to say, I was actually incredibly impressed because I usually call references for these types of projects, and I had never experienced an overwhelmingly positive response like I did, which was pretty exciting for me. And so therefore it is JGL's recommendation that the commission proceed with selecting Homestyle as their short-term operator for this coming summer.
Thank you, Brooke. Julie and Dennis, would you like to comment?
Sure. Actually, Brooke, can you give the details of the financial part of the lease? Since that's
Maybe
all
just
public information,
Tell
right?
us a little bit about, all of us a little bit about Homestyle, those of us that aren't as familiar.
So, well, Homestyle, they are a catering, so they do catering and they also have some restaurant operations. They work with the Westchester County Center. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the financial. I'll give the overview first of them.
Yeah, the overview is much more important.
Okay. Dunwoody Golf Course and Putnam Golf Course, Sacred Heart School, and Blue Hill. There's a Blue Hill Mansion. It's a golf course and cafe that
So
they
they operate restaurants and snack concessions in public parks, golf courses, and they do private event catering.
Yeah, and I believe they also have some town pools, which I'm just
right,
looking
right.
at the list here of the references that I had contacted. So they definitely have the right type of experience for this project. Yes, does that give you?
That's
a
good. That's good.
Okay. Financials?
Well, while we're talking about Homestyle, actually, so we narrowed this down to 3 candidates for everybody to know, because transparency is very, very important, and we're all about transparency. It really was a horse race. The runner-up was a very credible operator who worked in many parks, et cetera. The strength of Mr. How do you say it?
Shifatelli.
Shifatelli. Very, very impressive, actually. The range of the menu offering, the suitability of fit to what he does now, and his just the reputation that preceded him with his openness to work with the venue, whether it was at the county center or whatnot. I spoke to some folks at the county who operate, and this fits like a hand in a glove that fits right. It's
You must have quit, Dennis.
it's a great it's a very, very impressive fit. The concept is to have a Nathan's franchise on the beach in the concession stands, and then a steak and seafood grill type restaurant with moderately priced items and a bar, of course, and you know, all of the applicants were very, very excited at the opportunity of winning, so they could put their best foot forward to impress everybody for the next part of the exercise, which is really to get an extended contract, right?
Sorry, would you just explain how this Homestyle plans to approach the concession stands versus the concessions versus the restaurant?
Sure, yeah, so,
They're kind of distinct.
yeah.
Very, right? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Jess.
and like Dennis was saying, so Homestyle is a franchise, they have a Nathan's license, and so they would do a Nathan's concession both, at the beach level and then at the north concession. And then they would have what they're calling right now, and Al is totally open to the name, but he's calling it the Ocean Club Restaurant, which would then be a grill, that would be up on the restaurant level.
Yeah, I've actually seen his operation at the county center where they do that VIP experience. I saw it, and they have a staff of 77 people. They have like 15 locations. So the ability to staff this and manage it and operate it as a multiple franchisor operation, it doesn't happen often, but it's like a no-brainer. Financially, it's a lot of rent, but more important, and this is the final point, and then I'm going to just stop talking. It's almost sometimes you get what you ask for, right? Everybody wanted this opportunity so they could put their best foot forward. But if you're not spending $200,000 kind of a thing to make it look super pretty, how impressive is it going to be? Mr. Chifatelli
Shifatelli.
You can call him
recognized Al. No, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm friendly with the guy. But Al, as his name is, was very genuine, very sincere, and he recognized that he has to do a lot to impress us. Because you're as good as in the restaurant business. The way Brooke was saying about the references, you're as good as your last burnt piece of meat or whatever, right? In terms of people's reputation. So. I think he's the real deal, though. Yeah, I think he's the real deal. I think it was a competitive horse race. I think the commission's approach to have one operator to do it, and I think the uniqueness of his offering, really the financial agreement, the details are understated. The Nathan's license alone, the franchise, is $10,000 plus the equipment and the signage and stuff like that. It's a significant investment there, and right, and just to get everything up and ready, he got the county center concession stand operational within 48 hours, actually, literally. So in terms of a tight time frame, this does fit like a glove.
Just a question on detail.
Did you get up to the microphone?
Microphone.
Does he have a liquor license, or does he have to apply for one? And are there gonna be any limitations on, like, music, parties, if it's a bar or stand?
Great questions.
Sure. So the liquor license, I believe, and this is one of the other things that was really great about Al, is that he has experience with getting a temporary license, which then would become permanent, but so that he can be ready and operational.
He's very familiar and
Very
confident
familiar.
about
So
his ability to deliver.
he's ready to hit the ground running, as pending the go ahead. And your next question, about music. Well, I defer to you guys, but I know that in our meetings with Al, he was very, very open about being a real partner.
And sensitive to noise in the neighbors.
Very sensitive.
And sensitive to noise in the neighbors. He's not looking to make money off of a boom boom room.
And those things, Mr. Horner, those things will be spelled out in the actual contract.
Yeah, no, because
Happy to hear any suggestions you have on
We were
that.
sensitive to that too, actually.
Yeah.
Bill,
Maybe just take the microphone
Grab
from the
a mic.
table here. Take the
Come
mic
sit
from the
with us.
table
Good,
here.
yeah.
Use that
Remember
mic
our
there.
friends at home.
Yeah, you can use that for the audience.
Thousands of people watch.
Don't let that fall on your foot, please.
it's not on, you got to turn it on.
Oh, be careful of that, yeah.
Okay, my question is, that people have asked me, they said it's gonna cost them at least $300,000 just to get in all the equipment they need to run the restaurant. So how would you answer that?
That's a
They
great
own the
question.
equipment. They bought it from John Ambrose.
Let Brooke
So
answer.
one of the points that I think was very impressive about Al's foresight was that he actually did purchase the equipment at a very reasonable price from the previous operator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
So
Who he did not know.
who he didn't know. No.
I think it was sight unseen, actually.
Yeah, it was. So, and, kudos to him because he figures now that, he has that equipment. If he doesn't get this contract, then he has good equipment to either use at other operations that he has or
Sell it
sell.
on eBay.
So,
He got the refrigerator door.
so that, I hope that eases your concern.
You're in the market for
Yeah,
a
they're
door?
We don't want to get into that now.
So I just would like to add, because I think mostly it's been said, but there were moments where I was really worried that we weren't going to get what we needed there. And it was almost like, manna from heaven. And I think we really have gotten something that everybody wanted. We wanted a good concession place where you can go and get your very casual food, and you wanted a restaurant that still will be casual but slightly nicer food, and people wanted a bar. And I think we got that at a good price, and someone that is really truly interested in putting out a great product for us. So I think I'm hoping that we've sort of satisfied all our park constituents, many of whom have different ideas in mind about what they want the food to be. But I think we have a big range, and I'm really thrilled. And I think will be a great partner for this year.
And Mr. Chair, if I may add, and initially I was inclined against extending the consultant's contract to help us with the short term. I wasn't at the meeting to voice that, but I know I sent you guys an email. But I have
We
to say,
ignored you.
well, you didn't. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you went against my advice because I have to say, JGL and Brooke and Tracy added a tremendous amount of value to this process.
I
think
I
it's
forgot
building
that too, and I voted
blocks onto the
against
next-
adding you guys.
Did
So
you?
I
Okay,
voted
good.
against hiring you ultimately but I didn't know that we needed to, and you guys have been really great. So I was wrong, and
I
thank
was
you.
I was always supportive.
The other thing, Mr. Chair, I think it's worthy to mention, not just for the public's edification, but really all of the applicants that all of the finalists had very impressive visions and their concepts, and it was very interesting. The art of the possible for the restaurant, and people's interest in it. And I think once we get this operational, which I'm confident with Homestyle that you will and have a successful season, that in the bidding process for the longer term, I think you're going to get a lot of interest.
No, there was a lot of interesting concepts. I think some of which
Right?
weren't quite there, but could
But
get
for a
there by
long-term
the
investment-
next time. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I don't see a reason.
No,
So
we
the-
don't.
So
No,
sorry,
the
because you
only-
sent is the resolution just to go into a contract? I know we've been going on the contract, so I haven't had a
and
chance to read the
just-
most
Just
recent.
to say, council has been working with JGL and on putting together an operating agreement, a contract. I would say that it's probably 90% completed. And it was sent to the members of the commission for comment on, and there were some comments made. The contract has not yet been accepted by the vendor, but we're hopeful that that'll be done very quickly.
But the major terms, so basically this resolution is to authorize you to dot the i's and cross the t's on a negotiation and enter into an agreement, yeah?
Believe me, I'm not,
Because
I'm
time
not-
is of the essence.
I'm not signing anything until you guys all see it.
Oh.
I think we did see it.
We
Yeah,
saw the
yeah.
draft, it hasn't.
We saw the draft, but we didn't see the, they have not come back with comments on their side.
So,
I incorporated the latest round of suggestions from the commission members, which I received yesterday and some today. And that's in the version that I've also sent to the attorney for the potential licensee.
And with any luck, hopefully within a week or so, we'll be able to do it. And Jeff will send out a final version to make sure that everybody agrees. And
yeah, so the terms of what he put on the table, because I think this is important for people to understand, was 92,000 in rent. Yeah, go ahead, you want to?
Yeah, sure. So 92,000 in seasonal license fees starting May 1st, 2017 to October 31st, 2017.
let me just interrupt. We picked October 31st because basically that's the end, certainly past the end of the season. And when we go out for an RFP, we want the winner, whether it's Homestyle who bids again or somebody totally new, to be able to have the most time to get ready for the following season. We don't want them to be awarded a bid in January or February. So,
And then also a $9,200 security fee upon execution of the signed contract, $58,000 in investment, and 10% commission on sales above $750,000.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Right, so we were paying $100,000, we were receiving about $100,000 in rent. Mr. Ambrose walked away from 100 basically. This is 92, it's triple net, so he will be paying taxes, he'll be paying for the garbage disposal. Benny added tremendous value, and Julie, with additional comments that Mr. Binder very quickly incorporated into the contract draft that was forwarded to the vendor's attorney. So it's a good deal financially. He's going to put a lot of money in it. That money, it's funny, when we talked to people, right, some said they were going to put 200,000 in, but that's like buying tables and chairs. This guy didn't add that. This guy didn't add that. He's doing, and you could put in a restaurant, right, if it's a Wolfgang Puck restaurant, right, they put $1 million into the place just to make it look like what Puck wants it to look like. As the landlord, that's useless to us when Wolfgang leaves, right? So we saw bigger numbers from some. The essence of the capital improvement here is the substantive stuff that the facility needs. Bathrooms, bricks and mortar, and he's going to add on top of that because he's got to make it look good if he wants to win for next year, and he realizes what he's signing up for. No, I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, and the menu is subject to our approval, obviously,
Same
like
deal.
we did before. So I think we get to look at the uniforms too, right?
yes.
Absolutely. The menu, the uniform, believe it or not.
No roller skaters on there?
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Okay.
The resolution is in the executive session packet, which is set out by a paper clip at the back of your
Is that
files.
what it is? Is that what the paperclip was for?
But now, so, Mr. Chair and Brooke, if I can ask you guys both the same question. So if we wait a month to sign up Al, is that jeopardizing the success of the mission here? Or I think it is,
Yeah.
actually.
Wait,
So
wait a
how do
month to
we-
sign what?
So
can't-
I'm hearing that
Time is of the essence here.
the chair wanted to bring a contract back, but we're not meeting for another month.
No, I'm not bringing a contract back.
No,
When
we're
the
going to
contract-
see it.
We're
but
going to
not
see
in-
it.
Oh, so we're going to authorize you to enter into it.
You're
We're
authorizing
gonna
me
get
to
our
enter
input
into it.
before you do
And
that.
when,
I got it.
when
Okay.
Jeff and Tracy, Brooke, et cetera, come up with all the terms, they negotiate with Al and his attorney,
Yeah.
which may be somewhat different than the document that was sent to the attorney.
Sure.
Then when they're all agreed, then it'll be passed, it'll be emailed to the commission and, for final approval via email, and then I'll enter into it.
So, I mean, I'm okay, approving hiring this firm, subject to the negotiation of the terms of the contract. And as long as our corporation counsel, signs off on it, Jeff, as long as you and Kristen can work together on it, I'm okay with whatever it is. Hopefully, there's no major points of contention in there, but,
I already incorporated
Okay. Sure.
And so if the restaurant grosses $1 million, right, that's $250,000 over the $750, we would get an
Go
extra
buy hot
$25,000.
dogs.
God willing.
Is that just the restaurant or the concession too?
The
Is
whole,
it total?
do the whole thing.
It's the whole.
And it's
okay.
gross,
the
right?
whole-
It's gross.
So do,
So now we urge everybody to go to the new restaurant as often as possible.
Order lots of drinks.
Okay.
Lots of hot dogs.
And by the way, that the uniqueness of this 10% of the amount over is something that we didn't have in the old agreement. And,
Dennis?
and he also agreed, do you have that in there? Because this one is important. Do we have, I didn't look at the latest contract, that he's going to make his books available to us?
Yes, it's in there.
he has,
Yeah, it's in there.
he has to if we're
All right.
taking.
Yeah,
Dennis?
I
Dennis?
read it on Friday.
Dennis?
All right, I'm
May I
done.
have a motion and a second?
So
We
moved.
just-
Well, the only thing I would
Read
just
the
add to the resolution is subject, as Jeff just indicated, subject to the city corporation council signing off on it.
To the public?
Do we need to
So,
amend it, is the
no,
question?
we
I
don't.
don't think we need to,
No,
though.
no.
That's an understanding. We're not going to, if she objects to it, you're going to object to it, and then we're not going to sign off on it.
Okay. I mean, that's what I was basically
Yeah.
putting in the resolution. If that's the case,
It's not a,
okay. Okay.
no.
Motion by Dennis Pilla. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Do you want to roll, you don't want to read the resolution into the record? I mean, it's
We never read the
part of,
resolution.
I know.
Part of the
It's a
resolution.
fun one to read,
Yeah, it
though.
is. This is exciting. Casey's going to write a story about it. Actually, all
Resolution
the
authorizes,
Let me just, one thing before you take the vote. The only thing I would ask is, once we reach a meeting of the minds with the other side, that there be rapid response in terms of comment, okay?
Yeah, I think you gave it to us yesterday, and I think we turned it
That was
around
a really
today,
quick
so-
turnaround.
We're good.
Some people didn't comment, some members didn't comment, so there'll be a window of time.
Yeah, you forfeit the right.
Absolutely.
You know what, actually, Jeff, just to make it even quicker, can you put Kristen on the distribution list?
I'd put my
Fine.
trust in the two of you guys and Benny. I look at it myself, but no, you
Even
guys.
if we don't
Kristen
see
added
it,
substantive
because we're going
value,
to
too.
just look at it ourselves and send it to her.
it was big for me.
What?
The garbage was big.
Yeah, no, you're right, right?
Get through that.
Yeah.
Roll call, or am I reading the resolution?
Roll call. No offense, but we have a long meeting.
Yeah,
We've
we've
gone
already
through
been
3
going for a
items.
while.
We have 14.
Holy crow.
Commissioner Killian,
Yes.
Commissioner Sack,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Pilla,
Very excited, yes.
Commissioner Salanitro,
Absolutely.
Commissioner Zuckerman.
Yes. And now a related item.
Thank you, Russ.
Yes,
Thank
Russ.
you, Russ.
And Mr. Chuck Taglia.
Very nice.
And Brooke. And Tracy.
The next process in the restaurant saga will be to issue an RFP. In order to do that, to get a proper response, we need to have the state legislation amended to allow for a term longer than 3 years. We have prepared a resolution, it was on last time. It's been amended through the work of Jeff with Kristen Wilson, the Rye City Attorney, because the legislation must be passed by both the town of Rye and the city of Rye. So, I don't have a problem. Joe, have you gone through this
Where's
at
the
all?
now therefore?
Yeah, I mean, if Jeff can come back in, if this is the version that our corporation council looked at, then I
It
think
doesn't
it's
seem to
fine.
me to be complete. There's no now therefore be it resolved, or,
Oh, resolved.
okay.
All right, the only question I have, Joe, I know that Julie and I had spoken a long time ago about making it 20 years, and Kristen, I know from conversation with Jeff, put in 15 with the understanding that that was a placeholder. I think that,
I was wondering on that.
yeah, I would prefer 20, which
Yeah,
gives us
I-
more
So we'll do
flexibility.
20.
I think it should be 22.
With the understanding that, we
I mean, if
still
they-
have to come to a meeting of the minds on the deal anyway.
Yeah, well, you and I have to both approve it.
Sure.
Do you want Jeff back in here? Joe?
No, I think, well, it would be better if he was in, but, he seems to be busy, so.
Yeah,
Please.
actually, yeah.
Cut it short.
He could talk to her later. 20 is years, or?
Not to exceed, that'll give us.
The home rule
Is there a
legislation,
second page of this?
resolution, that's the
That's
one
what I
that
was
you
wondering.
reviewed with Kristen Wilson? Yeah. Okay.
Isn't there a part on the bottom?
My recollection is that that part about the providing the comment was the last part.
It just doesn't seem to be.
Well, the first resolved actually asks them to. Oh, this is resolved saying we're going to forward home rule requests to our representatives.
In other words, the Rye
what is
City
this- What is
Council,
this actual thing allowing us to do?
this
we-
is an agreement of the commission that the commission is requesting that the Rye City Council and the Rye Town Council each pass a home rule request, which I think we should make identical language,
They have to be.
Yeah,
They have to be,
right? To send to Steve Otis and George Latimer.
Sounds good.
So this is just saying that we're going to do it and outlining the basic terms of it, and then we each have to do our own thing. It will say the exact same thing,
Okay.
and we send it
Yes.
on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this basically tracks the language that Steve and George asked us to send, and it incorporates some of the language of the prior statute. Basically, it, other than the term, but the term was changed to 20 years. Jeff, please change that from 15 to 20. Just now. And
It's at the top, and then
the
in the
last
first
two,
resolved.
we resolved that any amendment require that leases and their renewals have the support of Rye Town Supervisor and the Mayor of the City of Rye, and that copies of the proposed leases, contracts, et cetera, be provided to the Rye Town Board and the City Council of the City of Rye. So,
So moved.
Second.
call the roll.
Commissioner Killian,
Yes.
Commissioner Sack,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Pilla,
Yes.
Commissioner Salanicho,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuckerman.
Yes.
Back.
All right, we're up to the discussion of the,
We can always bring it down.
So months ago,
Park
Mr.
fees.
Chair, months ago, we
always
went down
move it
this
back.
restaurant road with great trepidation about whether we were going to get somebody in for long-term and whether we would get détente, a consensus between Rye City and Rye Town on the home rule legislation, and poof, it all
Here
happened.
we are.
That's awesome.
Here
That's a
we
tremendous
are.
accomplishment. Sorry for the outburst.
Duh.
Dennis is having fun. Dennis, I'm hoping you're going to spend a lot of time at the park, spending
miss
money, so we make our 10% off you.
that's right,
Gonna
that's
get you to
right.
$1 million. That's my goal.
We need to approve the 2017 park fees, and I think that puts it in your court, Debbie, and possibly Kathy, and possibly Luke, and possibly Catherine.
Yes, so Luke and Catherine, who are head cashiers and multi-year veterans of the park, are here, as is Assistant Park Director Bill Lawyer, all of whom can answer questions and concerns about the park fees. You want to answer?
I mean, the yellow ones are the ones that have changed. I think it would be helpful to know what they're being changed from. I mean, that's
Yeah,
really what we need to know.
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Well, aren't they changed from where?
That's correct. So the, page 47. So what you see in the center column is what the fees were in 2016. And the column, the section to the right are the fees, proposed fees for 2017. I've highlighted in yellow any fees that were changed from the preceding year. So,
First set of yellow, it's not any different. It's the same.
pardon
Now,
me?
does that mean that it was changed from 2015?
Right, I think.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's correct. I just didn't go back in time further.
all right, now I understand it.
So what is being proposed, there are a number of things that we're trying to accomplish with the fee schedule. First of all, we're trying to simplify what has been a very complicated fee structure. And so we are eliminating one level of escalation, I believe. By, for example, for the non-permit holders, non-residents, at 4 p.m., the fee won't change anymore. It used to change. Now it will remain the same. And then the only drop will be at 7 p.m.
So that's going to impact diners at the restaurant. Are we going to be giving that money back?
We,
No,
Oh, yeah, we fixed that, didn't we?
Going on the beach.
No, this is parking.
increasing
well,
parking.
The
parking
parking is
will,
going to go from $5 to 20. I don't see outsiders paying 20.
Can we go
to come
section
to
by
the
And-
section,
restaurant or
do
the beach.
residents first, and then do
Our
non-residents?
big increase.
absolutely. So there's no,
This review of the budget, this seems like a lot higher than.
Seems a lot higher.
I think it was, this was subject to didn't Debbie wrote a memo on this as to why we were doing this, and Terry, we discussed this last month, I recall.
we did. And I did circulate a memo. It was in the packet previous that was sent to you for consideration also. There's part of the strategy for this is to address an unintended consequence of our fee structure. And that is that as the hour of 4 p.m. approaches, people stop entering the beach. Rather, they stand and wait until 4 p.m. and the numbers of people can grow quite large, and they become an obstacle for walking on the path, I understand. And at the stroke of the reduction in fee, then there's a problem with a surge of people going onto the beach. And this happens both at 4 p.m. and also at 7 p.m. More so on the weekends than the weekdays, but still it's a concern to the staff. It's a safety concern. In addition, the lifeguards have been going off duty at 5:30 p.m., which means that there's a surge of people going onto the beach roughly when the lifeguards are saying goodbye for the day, leaving no
Well, and that-
lifeguard duty, no lifeguards
I mean,
patrolling.
4 o'clock is the surge.
Well, at 5:30, they go off
And-
duty, yes. So at 4 o'clock, there's a surge, and then at 7 p.m., another surge of people, when previously the entrance was free. So what we're proposing to do is to keep our lifeguards on as long as there are people on the beach. We want lifeguards on duty, trained for the purpose of protecting them. Part of the problem with having no lifeguards on duty is that the staff who are on duty, the security guards, who we're now calling rangers, and the maintenance people are performing their jobs and trying to keep an eyeball on the water to make sure there's nothing unsafe happening. And on several occasions over the past years, they've actually conducted rescues, for which they're not really trained. Although we have started to give them CPR and offer waterfront training for anyone who wants that, or safety training, really, not waterfront training. So part of what we're trying to do by keeping the fees the same from 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. is a crowd calming measure, so that when people come, they enter the beach, not stand and wait and build up a crowd and then crush onto the beach. We understand also that this is going to probably reduce some of our numbers, because inevitably with price elasticity, there will be people who will choose not to come to our beach because of that. And that is a concern, but I think safety is a larger concern.
Bill?
Yeah, I think, Debbie, you covered that very well. And I think we had many conversations over the last few years about the whole issue of the lifeguards and late in the afternoon. And as you know, during the whole month of July, it doesn't get dark till around 9 o'clock. So if you have the lifeguards going off and saying, well, no swimming, but who's going to enforce that? So that's the one important thing. On looking at it on another, you notice on the top of the fee structure, the permits for residents, none of this affects them in any way. They get on the beach for free. They don't have, you see it says free, lots of free there. And so our theory is that, many people it wouldn't be a hardship for them to take out a membership, a permit if they are residents, because it's relatively inexpensive, and then they wouldn't have to think about any of this stuff. That our primary focus, and is what happened when we raised the rates for non-resident, non-permit holders last year, is that we had a decline to a certain extent in the number of cars that were having to be put into the overflow parking areas, which many people are opposed to. And so we had actually less cars, but still brought in more money, because the people who did come, they really wanted to come. And it's one way of sorting out, where do you put your value, and you're saying if they have to pay a certain amount of money as a non-resident, non-permit holder to help subsidize the cost of the park, I think most of us would agree with that. That's not a bad idea.
And Bill, let me interject one thing. Also, you mentioned resident permit holders, non-resident permit holders. It seems that they're not being changed either.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Right. So
Our theory is
we're encouraging permit holders.
We want people to have permits, and it's very obvious why, because we start off the year in April with a lot of expenses and not much money in the bank, especially in the years when we were losing money every year. But one of the reasons that we haven't been losing money is we've been really monitoring these things closely to see if you change this is what will happen. But people used to say, oh, you can't possibly increase the rates for parking because nobody will come. Well, you can see we've had great success. People have come, and these are people who come from Scarsdale, Larchmont, New Rochelle, all over the place, and they're just happy to have a beach that's open. Keep in mind that Playlands Beach closes, period, at 6:30. You can't even be down there not swimming. You just can't be on the beach. So we're it. If anybody wants to
No,
go.
and this is not an increase. It really is just, you're not changing it down. You're not reducing it at that early an hour.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So how often did 100 people or more gather at
Bishop
4
Park,
o'clock and then again at 7 o'clock?
Well-
and I know it says 100 people plus and more on the weekends.
I'm there a lot.
And maybe
Now,
you guys want to answer.
Catherine and
They
Luke,
can
do you want to
answer that
come up
question.
and answer?
But while they're coming
First-hand
up,
witnesses?
I can just say this, that on any nice day and those long days, you'll get a lot of people wanting to get out onto the beach as soon as they can. So and on the nights when we have the concerts, we see it. We see large numbers of people coming out. So it is. I think it's
could always
worthwhile
change
to
it.
keep that in mind.
Please introduce yourselves.
Luke Lockenberg. I'm one of the assistant park directors.
Catherine Aguilar.
And we basically oversee all the cashier booths. I personally agree with this change, not to change it down to $5. First off, because you're going from $20 on weekends down to $5.
Wait, which there's so many different, specifically things are you
for a
talking about?
non-resident, non-permit holder. If you were
Non-resident,
coming to
non-permit
park on a
holder.
Saturday or Sunday or holiday, you'd pay $20, but if you came after 4, you'd pay $5. That's a big decrease, and also when we were doing research on this, the county parks do not change their parking prices or entrance for the beach, according to Playland's website. And I would say every Saturday and Sunday when it's pretty nice out, especially at the end of June when everyone's getting out of school and work, July, August, and even before Labor Day weekend, there are large crowds. I would say 150 to 200 people standing at the middle gate because they'll come up to the gate, read our prices, and see that, okay, well, if I wait another couple hours, the beach is going to be free. So keeping that price, I think, will push more non-residents to get permits, and it's not really affecting resident permit holders or residents that come to the beach, because if they show that they're from Rye, Blind Brook, or Rybrook or Portchester, it's $8 or $7 and $9 and $8 on weekends for parking and beach access.
Well, beach access is $2.
Well,
What,
after
what
7.
about,
Yeah.
can I throw out one thing? What about just keeping that free because they're residents? Instead of just charging $2, can't we just keep those 2 free? I'm just throwing it out there for discussion.
That's a cool idea.
'Cause
I like
I
free.
don't know, like
I like
I
free
like
beach
to
for residents.
I like to
We made money.
support our residents, and I mean I do that jump down from 20 to 5. I agree, sort of doesn't make sense. I think, you know, to me, I like the beach late in the day, so
Yeah,
I can
that's
see
cool.
why. So you're saying, would you say on nice days, like that is often forgetting the weekends, but even it goes from 15 to 5 on the weekdays. So on nice days, is that pretty much a regular occurrence that there's this big, do they wait to come into parking also?
Yeah,
So what do they do? Is there like a lineup of,
They'll literally.
or they
go-
know and they just don't come?
Along the seawall, they park.
Yeah. Or they'll wait in the
So let's fix
circle.
the seawall so they can drive down there. That's,
Sorry, Julie.
They annoy your
yeah, we'll have
neighbors.
more place for them to hang out and wait. So yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. But I just would like I thought of raising. We had a surplus, and I agree we're trying to provide more services. We're having lifetime guards more, but
if we're talking-
why we had a surplus
If we're
and
talking about the $2, I don't think the $2 makes a difference. So why don't we just, make that, go back to
agree,
free
yeah.
on the $2.
For residents.
For residents.
Non-permit holder residents.
Non-permit
holders-
holder residents.
Residents.
Free after
Free.
7.
At-
Don't
After
change any of it.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. to close.
7 p.m. to close.
Yes.
That's fine.
Debbie, on the non-permit holder, non-resident, 7 p.m. to close, should you have highlighted the $10 from a $5 increase? From the $5, because it's not highlighted, but I think it should be.
Yeah, I see that.
right?
There's some other
Yes,
things that
yes.
should be yellow
I
that are
should've.
not yellow.
Okay, okay.
It's-
That's doing
Sorry,
much.
guys.
That's an increase.
The
as
yellow
well.
indicator actually doesn't help at all, but if you look at the numbers.
I'm just going to stop coloring,
Can I
okay?
ask questions? So how long are we proposing to keep lifeguards on?
Until dusk, until we close the beach.
So that's going to be obviously a different hour at different times of the year. Are we?
Yeah.
So when?
Cost is that
When
gonna
I
be
did the
budget?
pro forma, I basically did it with a Head and Shoulders kind of an addition.
How
So
much
we're
more does that
adding,
add?
it's about, well, obviously this is subject to the vicissitudes of weather,
Yeah.
right? But it's going to be about $20,000.
So what?
Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but about that.
So I'm just, I guess, I mean, it's hard to imagine 5:30, some, days when it's sunny and nice out, you don't even know it's 5:30, it seems like it could be 2:00, and I imagine people are staying and swimming, so I guess it doesn't make sense to me. We stop at 5:30 or stop watching the beach, though clearly that has worked for many years, so in some ways I say, why change it?
Well, you know why you
I'm
changed
just
it?
sort of trying to figure out. I mean, I'm going to ask you guys, since you guys are there all the time. What do you? I mean, how? If there's.
Ms. Killen, can I just, here's the
Let
key.
them speak.
I'm sorry, go ahead, all right, go ahead.
Having the lifeguards go off duty at 5:30 on the weekends has been a really big problem, especially Sunday because it's their busiest day, and there's so many people that want to stay in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they leave, and then that's it for them.
So what about the weekdays? So let's say Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're saying problem. What about Monday through Thursday?
Not as much, but when it is the middle of July and it is the middle of August and the summer is winding down during the week, we do get just as busy, if not more, on some weekdays than weekends. We can't really give you.
People are on vacation and.
And here's the opportunity, right? This isn't, I'm sorry, Matt? Mr. Chair, sorry. I'm just bubbling over with excitement here.
Can't get over the restaurant he's going to hang out in.
Well, we're making money, we have a good restaurant, right? But here's the thing, we're a local beach, right? So as you guys were saying, and thank you, by the way, for coming in, the fine job that you do. The park's open to 9, you get home from work at 6. You could spend a couple hours on the beach. The difference between us having lifeguards during the week and not is the difference between having people being able to swim after work and not. I think that's a big amenity, actually. And if we are in good shape financially with the surplus and whatnot,
The fact of the
that
matter
this
is,
wasn't a fluke.
Dennis, the
The
fact of
surplus
the,
was last year. This is the new year.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying,
Dennis,
for.
the fact of the
budget
matter
zone.
is that people are going to swim on a warm day in the evening, whether there are lifeguards on duty or not. They're just going to go in the water. And the rescue is going to have to be done by security staff that is not trained to do that.
Yeah, well,
So
I think lifeguards
if we're gonna,
may be a
if
good
we're
idea.
going to
So does it,
allow people on the beach and into the water, there should be lifeguards. It's as simple as that.
does it make your lives a lot harder when there's a bunch of people on the beach?
I'm sure that he did.
You guys or just anybody at the park, if there's no lifeguard on the beach, is anyone down there?
That's a problem. People don't want to pay beach entrance if there's no lifeguard.
Yeah.
I can understand that as a mother with children, that you feel better when there's a, but forgetting those people for a minute, there's people on the beach, there's no lifeguard. Who do you guys, or is there somebody, security, that's walking around on the beach?
There's always security posted at the middle gate, which is the entrance they would be using to come onto the beach.
And they'd be there anyway, even if the lifeguards weren't. Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is if they have to go onto the beach for any issue of someone drowning, let's say, then they have to leave their post. If you keep the lifeguards till dusk, it would probably be safest for the park in regards to safety, because they don't have to leave their post, and another security guard doesn't have to come over and cover them and then leave the post they're at. It's like one big cycle, not having lifeguards or not having a first aid member there, because we have had to use security to actually save someone, from drowning, and a cashier.
Well-trained
Can we-
cashiers.
Could we make it more concrete that if we decide that we want to extend the hours, we just say like 8 o'clock? Is that a good idea, a bad idea?
Well, the sun changes.
No, I know, I realize that, but
There's
you know-
also, there's also fireworks nights as well, where the whole idea
I'm
is
kind of
people-
assuming that staffing may be completely different on a special night like that.
Gary, can we hear from some residents?
Yeah,
I
like
see
maybe,
Mr.
yeah.
Gold.
Thanks.
Russ,
Yeah, Russ Gold.
Don't leave yet. We might have more questions, if that's okay.
I'm trying to address Julie's point that she made out that this has been going on for years with no lifeguards past thing. And I understand your safety concerns. And obviously we've had a couple of issues. I can't say I'm not there 24/7, so there obviously you folks aren't lying. There have been issues. Where I was raised, on the South Shore of Long Island, Jones Beach, that was our beach, okay? Lifeguards go off duty at a specified time. I believe it's 6 o'clock, regardless what time of the year it was, okay? So periodically, they have rangers or whoever the security police, and they run up and down the beach. I mean, this is 10, 12 miles of open ocean water that they just periodically, just to pull people out of the water, all right? Just to say, you can't be swimming now. At our beach, which is about a quarter of a mile, all right, we have a public address system that I can hear 5 blocks away. So I'm putting this, I understand that the security guards are not trained for these things. So a periodic walk on the beach, if people are in the water, or an announcement, reminding people, announcement over the public address system, which I said you can hear on the North Shore of Long Island, I guarantee you. They would just say, please, no, there's no lifeguards on duty, swimming is not permitted, please exit the water. Problem solved.
yeah.
Why would I want to do it? Because
I feel like I need to, rather than argue it, I feel like you need to hear what public is thinking. Bill, I know you're worried, but I get like.
Tell us your name and your,
Jamie Jensen, 588 Forest, and I know I'm a broken record, and I talk about perception all the time, and I talk about the tax-paying residents of the 4 towns that you represent. So the first thing that needs to be said is, given the fact that that I worry that we're not a public park, that we're becoming focused on revenue generating and not about being a public park, and that we're ignoring on a regular basis the lives of the residents who pay taxes because we want to make money, that we sometimes forget to pause and say what really matters to us. So I think, and I'm just going to say this, that as soon as the lifeguards go home, which is usually around 6 p.m., the beach should be open to everybody. It's open. The gates are closed. We don't need to pay lifeguards or beach gate attendants because every time you extend hours, that means we have to charge more money to residents. So it's like a zero-sum game. You're not winning on this. We're like feeding the beast. We create a bigger beast and we have to keep feeding it. And then we keep sweating every time there's a rainy day because we've created an even bigger beast that we have to pay for, that we have to chase money for. I really, really do think we need to remember, and I'm a Democrat, so I'm just going to say that, we tend to overregulate. We don't live in a nanny state. We're grown-ups and we're adults, and we don't need to babysit. And you put the proper signage up, and you do the kinds of things that Russ just acknowledged. Use the PA system. You walk down the beach, you tell people. Otherwise, people are grown-ups. It shouldn't, I just sort of feel like we go too far with this panic all the time. If you're worried about surging numbers, given that we're close to Playland and Playland closes, and so everybody's going to run over, start to have a conversation about saying, you know what, we're going to start spot checking. If you don't have a parking receipt from parking at Rytown Park, or you don't have a residential permit, then you don't go on the beach. But you do it as a spot check rather than a gate. I don't think controlling the gate is a way to promote a public park, especially when you think about parents who are coming to the beach at the end of the evening and they want to sit down. So this is my last piece. Finally, for those residents who want to come to the park in the evening but do not live close enough to walk, parking costs should be reduced from 6 p.m. until closing for all residents. I think the $5 last summer seems reasonable. Anything more is gouging the taxpaying public. I feel pretty strongly that residents of Rye Neck, Rye Brook, and Portchester should not be penalized because they don't live in the city of Rye. This is economically feasible if you keep the non-resident rates the same from 9 a.m. until the guards go off duty at 6 p.m. I think we need to start acknowledging that the residents are what matters. So if somebody wants to walk their dog on a beautiful evening at 7 p.m. and they have to plunk down $10, that's really, really gouging your taxpaying public. And I think we forget because we get caught up in chasing paying salaries, and we're not being thoughtful about it. So whereas I appreciate some of the issues that Debbie and Bill brought up, and you guys are amazing. I love the way you actually convinced me on a lot of the stuff. I do think we have to stop every so often and go, really? That's perception. Really? That's what we want to do? We want to say, and I'm glad you went to free already. Give me $2 more, and I'm going to pay an attendant. So it's not like we're making any money. We have to pay the attendant to collect the $2 at the gate. It's insulting. And I think we need to stop doing that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a quick question?
Yes,
So,
Dennis.
first of all, that was very refreshing, both of you. Thank you very, very much. But in short, you feel there's no added value to having lifeguards at night? Like, I'm a rule follower, believe it or not. So, like, if the sign says no swimming, I'm not going to swim. But, and I'm not just saying that because I'm elected. But if we had the lifeguards, and if we could afford it, of course, right? I don't like spending the taxpayers' money. That's why I'm here. You don't think having that after-work swimming window would be an enhancement? We're really expanding the service of the park. That's almost an amenity.
Can I add to that? Because that was going to be my question. What about, I know we're talking about being adults, and I agree with much of what you said, but what about the parent that comes down? I mean, I just remember, I have 5 kids. I had 3 under 3. Like, I remember how stressful it was being at any beach or near any pool for me. And often when I would go to a beach, I would want to go to a beach with the lifeguard, because even though you can't take your eyes off your kids, just knowing there's that other person.
That's an amenity.
So, and maybe that's not happening at 8 o'clock,
It
but
is.
you know, it could easily be happening if you get home from work. So
We can't disagree with you. I
Yeah,
can't
like
disagree
I-
with you because we're not going to be able to
Russ,
assuage
I know.
everybody's here. Just one
Right.
second. However, you know, again, as Jamie was trying to say, we have responsibility as adults, you know, for our family. And
I agree.
again, if we decide that we can't afford this, we don't have to have we can't have lifeguards on, there are alternatives to keeping people out of the water. One last thing that I think was overlooked about the fee structure is that for residents, according to this, in 2016, from 7 p.m. to close was free, and now in 2017, you're saying from 7 p.m. It was $2, but also the from 4 p.m. Again, this is just residents. 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. You said $5, and now you're proposing $8.
What?
An increase for the residents? in 2017? Is that just a
I
typo?
agree. I agree that we should. The
It
fees that
shouldn't
when we
change
got rid of the
fees
$2,
for residents.
I was like, that was the beginning. I think
the
there's.
fees
Get
at
rid
all.
of the $2, but you went from the 4 to 7 slot. You went from $5 in 2016 to $8 in 2017. Do you see what am I?
We went
looking
from
at?
5 and
Yeah,
5 to
actually,
8 and
that-
7.
That actually was a typo that year. So, yeah.
Wait, what's the typo? What's the typo?
Let me just say something.
Reverse.
There's an
5 and 8.
expectation, there's an expectation when people come to the Rye Town Park and to Oakland Beach, that there's going to be supervision. We've spent a lot of time enhancing the security staff, the lifeguard staff, even the maintenance staff. And we even have maintenance almost all year round now. There is that expectation. The change in fees is more for safety than anything else, and I think that what you're raising are important issues, what you and Jamie are raising are important issues. I don't think that the time to raise that issue is particularly now, but when we have our next community conversation going forward, I think that this is something in terms of the overall view of the park and what we want the park to be. Perhaps, I don't know what answers we're going to get from the Capstone people on, I don't recall a lot of the questions at this point. But I think this is a conversation that should be had. I think it's a really relevant and important conversation. But as you see, we've given a lot of thought into this, and we've tried to impact residents the least amount possible.
All right.
Especially permit holders, which we are trying to encourage.
Right, permit fees are not going up at all.
No.
No,
Gary,
not at all.
I'm going to make a motion that we not increase the fees at all for 2017 for residents, and that the 7 PM to close remain free for residents.
And
For the beach?
Well, that I think we
We
already.
already-
Yeah, so no
we already
change,
agreed on
no
that, yeah.
change, right.
No, and I'm sorry, just Debbie, just to reiterate, you acknowledged that the 4 to 7 p.m. beach entry fee for residents, that's just a typo? It should really be.
I was referring to the 2016. There wasn't an increase for residents in 2017. The idea is that it remained the same. However, what we did do was we did get rid of the escalation at 4 p.m. So
I'm confused now. So are the numbers on here not
yeah.
correct?
No, they're basically correct. It was from the previous year. They were flipped. The 5 and the 8.
Oh, so it should have been 8 to 5 instead of 5 to 8, as far as dollars are concerned. Yeah.
Oh, and what?
So when we didn't change the non-resident pricing of 20 and 15 and 15 and 10. So for parking, it's 20 and 15, weekends is 20, weekdays is 15.
Right.
For non-residents, and then to get onto the beach on weekends, it's 15 for non-residents and 10 on weekdays. For residents, we also didn't have a price drop from 4 to 7. Non-residents and
So
residents.
can I ask you this? So since you seem to know a lot about the crowds that queue up either at 4 o'clock or at 7 o'clock, since there already is differential pricing between resident and non-resident, even at those times, of the people that are queuing up, what percentage are residents and what percentage are non-residents?
I would say there's more non-residents on weekends.
I was just going to
But
ask that question.
Okay.
So
All right.
you want to go the direction you suggest?
Sure. I would agree with Mr. Rose.
All right,
Mayor
this is
Rosenberg.
what we're going to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amend it. The changes for non-residents that are proposed will be accepted. The changes for residents will not be accepted.
Correct.
We're going to go to the
2016
the
numbers.
2016 numbers for residents.
Correct.
Okay? That is.
And what
that
about
is
the lifeguards?
compromise. Pardon me?
And what
So,
about the lifeguards?
Maybe we want to hear Mr. Horner before we make
They're
any
on,
more
yeah, I agree.
suggestions.
We're only approving fees. We're not.
We're approving fees.
Sorry,
Just
okay.
approving fees.
Or do you have questions for them?
Yes, well, Debbie raised the issue of extending the
name.
life, Philip Horner, extending the lifeguard. I think that's a very positive thing, and if you can afford it, it should be done. Russell said something that I didn't agree with, that we should be thinking of ways of how to keep people out of the water. I think it's the opposite. We should be thinking of ways to make it safe for people to go into the water.
If we could afford it, yeah.
And, I mean, you could set a limit of 7:30 or 8 o'clock or something like that. I don't think that's a problem, but.
I was thinking about the same thing.
It should go beyond 5:30 on a hot day.
I don't think that this fee schedule has an impact, pardon me, that's the wrong word. The fee schedule doesn't dictate the timing of the lifeguards. What we're proposing now is that the lifeguards will remain on duty until close. If we find during the course of the year that it's practical to set a time limit, let's say, 8 o'clock or something, then we can do that.
But-
We're kind of experimenting with it. The important thing is to at least propose the fee schedule so that we can go forward. And if it doesn't work, we'll change it next year.
But you're proposing to go further, and what I would propose, and what Mr. Horner just said is, why don't we just try 7 o'clock? We were at 5:30. Why don't we try 7? You're suggesting we go all the way to dusk and then pull it back. I think it's a lot easier to add and see how that goes. Does it cover most of our problems, or does it not? Well, I don't know what the exact time is. I'm
What about
throwing out
7:45? The sun.
Do I hear 7:46?
The
So
sun
I-
changes all the time. People on a hot, warm summer day
No, we
are going to want to go in maybe at 8 or 8:30 even in July.
Julie, if
I
there
don't
are
know,
people
even-
on the
even the
water,
pool at Rye
they're
Golf
going to
Club
go in.
closes
They
at
go.
some
They
point.
they do go in.
I think there's a lot of beaches. Well, Playland closes at 7. I think there's a lot less. Well, you guys, okay. After, can you give me a sense? Give us a sense, rather.
8 o'clock smells right, so people
After-
can towel off and
We
get off
can-
the beach
we
by
can
9,
we
right?
can discuss this further when we have a discussion, hopefully next month, on
But I thought
park
this
rules.
is part of the budget. If we're adding lifeguards in, it's part of. Are we approving the budget tonight?
Hopefully.
Well, how can we do that if we don't decide how long our lifeguards are working? So anyway, if you had to pick a time, maybe I'll ask it this way, that we'd get most of the people that are swimming. Can you come up with one? Or is it so
look,
different?
with all due respect, Luke and Catherine are cashiers, and we don't have numbers for the evening. So I think that what you're
It's
asking is a
anecdotal,
really
like, obviously.
true. But next month, let's have our security staff here, and Terry Finelli will be back, and we can have a thorough discussion about when people go in the water.
And Mr. Chair, while the fees are not about the lifeguards, I think having this discussion while we contemplate raising the fees gives us a rational basis for charging workers.
Yeah.
Benny and I were just recollecting as a sidebar that we step down the fees when the lifeguards go home because you're getting half the experience not being able to go to the water, right? I do think having lifeguards at night would differentiate our beach. And it's not about the revenue, it's about providing an amenity to our residents, right? And if we could make it free to go on the beach, that's all the better, right? Yeah, we should do that for all the time. So I think this is all very, very positive. And I do agree with the comments that were made by Russ that, if they're not supposed to swim, get them out of the water, sort of a thing. But really, this is spinning it on its head and saying, let them swim.
Right now,
for 29, right?
right now, we've made a tentative determination. We need to vote on it, where the resident fees are not changing. The non-resident fees are changing according to the schedule. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
And, just one quick question, I'm sorry. The restaurant, we're rebating the restaurant for the change in the parking fees, so it won't be necessarily an impediment to them. Okay, great.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Killian.
Yes.
Commissioner Sack.
Wait for Commissioner Sack.
Okay. Commissioner Rosenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilla. Commissioner Salanitro.
Yes, but we're also including the changes in the parties. The party fees are also included in the.
That is correct.
Correct.
Wait, we can
Yes.
talk about
After
that.
many years, we are increasing our parties by $50.
Yes.
I know Debbie didn't want you to answer my question, but did you, and you don't have to, but do you have an answer to it? Like, did something come to mind? Or, I know it's a difficult question to answer, about just at what time do you think most of the people sort of finish swimming? Or maybe there's not an answer to my question.
Yeah, and a big thing is
On a nice day.
once people who are coming on the beach after 7C, there's no lifeguards. For some reason, more people go in the water, especially with their kids.
Okay with that?
It sounds.
Excuse me, we're in the middle of the vote.
Oh,
Call the last one, please.
We're on a roll.
Commissioner Sack, how do you vote?
the fee schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you guys again. You guys do a great job.
Thank
actually.
you so
A lot of
much
people
for
tell us
coming
about
out.
that.
Thank you, guys. We have the budget, we have a possible executive session regarding a personnel issue. May I make a motion? I'd like a motion for executive session. This will not take long.
To discuss personnel.
Yes.
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This will be brief.
Different.
All right, we're back on the record. May I have a motion and a second to go into public session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we're in
That's
public.
out of executive
All in
session.
favor?
Yes. Aye.
All right, we're in public session. We discussed two personnel issues. They are budgetary matters, and the Assistant Park Director, Mr. Bill Lawyer, has been increased to 17.5 from a previous amount. And unbeknownst to her, we made a motion to increase the Park Secretary's wages from $15,000 to $20,000. Surprise! I think they've both been doing.
Now
a
when you're
ter-
working late at night.
well, considering she probably should be double that, but okay. I think both of you have been doing a terrific job, and I think the entire commission is pleased with the way the park has been operating and the personnel have been operating, and I think that we're blessed to have such great people. With that,
Who put
now-
in many hours beyond, I'm sure, what
Right.
they get paid for, so thank you.
Okay,
And
now-
Terry, who is not here, who does a great job too.
Well, she did get a raise.
I know, but I'm just,
That's okay. That's a good plug. We are now going to discuss and hopefully approve the 2017 budget now that we've approved the fees. We've gone over the budget several times. This is the third meeting. Are there any questions about the budget that remain?
well,
Any
I'm-
changes? Debbie, have there been any changes since the last meeting? I think there may have been one or two.
Sorry, Fred. There probably have been a couple. I think the notable change that I'd like to bring to your attention is a continuation of the policy set by the commission to modernize the park. So what's different between the last budget that you saw last month and this month is there's an additional $5,000 in capital expenditures for a proposal from an organization called Sturgis, which is a partner of PayPal's and dedicated to government. And we are going to be making our permit process electronic. So people who want to continue reapplying for their permits on paper and showing up at the permit office, they can absolutely continue to do that. But they will also be able to apply online and access their permits on their mobile devices. In addition, we are going to be having all permit instead of having a single permit for a family, we're going to have a permit for every family member with their photo. This will enable us to have greater controls over who our permit holders are. We're going to get much better numbers, metrics about who's using the beach. In addition, for the first time, we're going to start collecting email addresses and building an electronic method for communicating with our permit holders that we haven't been able to do. So that 5,000, in addition, Sturgis will be building for us the ability to rent out our pavilions electronically as well. That can be done, that will be able to be done online rather than showing up at the park and filling out by hand a permit, an application. They'll be able to sign up online, they'll be able to pay their deposit online, they'll be able to pay for the facility online. Stepping into the 21st century.
I love it.
So those are our two innovations, and I would also say that this is a first step. This is an organization which is able to allow us to take beach and parking fees electronically as well over mobile devices, paid in advance if we want. But this is how we're starting, which is carefully to make sure this is going to work and how it's going to work, and then we're going to grow from there.
So where do we see this in the budget? Because I think there's a like a
You're
down
gonna see-
payment and a monthly cost.
Yes, there's a $5,000 capital expenditure, which is built into the other IT infrastructure that we're doing. You want me to find the page for you? That would be at the end. I can tell you, there's a whole section on capital expenditure. In addition, there's $300 a month in the operating as well.
So where does that come in? It's under fees, payroll, credit card, bank.
Thank you, Kathy.
I don't. Oh, I see it now. And I'm assuming since we're doing this that there's credit card fees associated with it. So have we?
PayPal is going to match or better the credit card processing fees we're currently paying to TD Bank.
So we already pay them. So that's
Yes.
already baked into.
That's correct.
That's already baked into. Okay. So the detail on the capital expenditures. So I have this page. Is there another page I should be looking at?
Largely, there's a narrative that opened up that section.
Sorry, I printed out some of it, and then you gave me some, and I had some from last time, and I'm getting my pages confused. So show me. I know.
Page
I sometimes
60.
come over and pick up my packet, so then I don't print it out. At least I have. So which page?
Page 60.
Here, Joe. You
Yeah.
find page 60, and I'm sorry, I have so many papers.
Can I
60 of
just,
the-
can I just back you up? I'm looking at meeting packet page number 58. And this is the last page of the budget that we're going to be asked to approve, right?
I think Julie's on it, on this.
Oh, wait, hold on. Meeting, tell me, okay, wait, I think I found
Which
them.
is the capital.
Meeting
Right.
packet page, what'd you tell me to go to?
60.
60, okay.
Right. We have two things. We have proposed capital projects. I think that's what you're looking at, Julie. But we're talking, Joe is talking about the operating budget. So let's,
You updated this, I'm gonna get rid of this.
Well, no, the operating budget, at the end of the operating budget, there's a capital budget. It's,
True, although there is a new section below the operating budget in between called Roll Forward for Extended Hours. That's on page 58. That is, that's a reflection of our proposal that we add $20,000 for lifeguard compensation expenses and our estimate of the additional revenues that we will collect as a result of staying open from 5:30 to dusk. Essentially, we're calling it a wash.
So
But that's what
we've
that is.
changed our fees, so we're not gonna have the same wash, and then I don't understand how we can, unless that's, if it's part of the budget, until we decide, as someone suggested, we were going to decide later how long our lifeguards are working. How do we approve our budget?
Well, we don't have unit numbers on what's going to happen in the evenings.
No.
Right. So when I did the pro forma, it came and actually it will be close to 20,000. It was actually more. It was more than 20,000. But I was just saying that we have to discount it because of the change in fees. Anyway, so
can I take a stab at it this way? So everything we need to know, I think, is on page 58 of the packet, all right?
all right.
You have, in the right-hand column, it says 2017 proposed budget. You have the total revenue line of $1,168,000. You have the total expenditure line of $1,059,000, and therefore there's a projected surplus of $108,000, right?
Right.
Okay. By the way, do those numbers include the $97,000 and $92,000 in revenue we're going to get from the restaurant?
I made it an even 100.
Okay, yes. The answer is yes? Okay. So great. If all goes well, and not a guarantee that everything will go as planned because these are all elastic revenues, we're projecting $108,000 surplus. Okay. But now if you go down, there's this other little section on the bottom called capital budget, and it says capital expenditures of $1,296,000. Of that, $657,000 is FEMA revenue. So really, there's if the math is correct, it's $639,000 in capital expenditures, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then underneath that, it says the city of Rye has to pay $251,000. So I honestly don't think that I can commit the city. I don't think the city of Rye has budgeted for $250,000.
We need to
It's
talk
my-
about our
it's-
capital budget, right? We haven't had
Yeah.
a discussion.
I would think that's correct. And you, Joe, you've been on the commission for years. So this is a line that has been pulled forward year after year after year. I would say that the park commission doesn't always spend that amount. But it's,
We normally approve or adopt the capital budget after the
Yeah.
operating budget.
Okay, but
Right,
it's part of the
so-
document.
Right, so, yeah, I'm with
and this-
Joe. I
and
think
this
we
could be
should.
this could be my lack of experience with it. But
Make a decision on that.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I was talking to Dennis.
Let me interject,
So,
let me interject something. The capital budget is a wish list. There's a lot of stuff on the capital budget doesn't get approved. It requires a separate resolution. For example, if we are going to build a seawall, then it's going to require another resolution to do that work. This is not,
That's fine. I just want to make it clear that the budget that we're voting on and approving tonight is just the operating budget. It's not the capital budget.
So I would suggest going forward that that whole bottom part of the budget should just be off, because that's a whole separate thing.
Julie, I agree with you, and I've often wondered why it's on there, because if you look at it, it says, the title is Operating Capital Budget. And that's what has been since I've been on this
It should be
commission.
operating budget.
All of a year.
Strike the
But
capital.
the reason why it was there, though, if I may, is because whenever we had fund balances, I keep referring to fund balance, when we had a positive cash flow, we committed to put it into capital. So that's why that line was added. But not for an expense side, just as a
But I think the
source.
budget should be called operating budget.
Operating, and then if you
And-
have a
and then-
capital
and
line.
then there's
You know
the
something?
capital
I don't have a
budget.
problem with that. I had made
Making
that,
all kinds of
I had made
changes.
that suggestion at one time previously, and just let it go because it's always been
Yeah,
operating
no,
capital
it
budget.
seems like a little thing, but it's, just to be clear, I think we
We
should.
could change the
I'm
name.
all
So,
in favor.
so, yeah,
Kathy,
because I,
do we have
you know,
a
if we-
problem changing the name? Good, the name is
Oh.
changed.
Mr. Horner has something to say, and he's a controller.
I'm just going to comment on this tonight, that I have looked into the budget, and I even got a hold of the financial reports from prior years. And I was a controller, budget manager for 40 years in the city for various organizations. And I was told by several parties, in fact, Mrs. Zuckerman, you just said it again, that it was a wish list. When you run a budget, capital is important, and the list that makes up it is part of the planning of the commission.
I agree with you.
And so to just dismiss it as a wish list is wrong. Well, it's bad process. You should be
You're right.
approving, when you approve the budget, the projects that you're committing to do this year. Naturally, they will be estimates because you have to round the numbers. But there is a list in there of the things,
Yeah.
including the seawall.
I agree with you. I think it should be a whole separate. We approve our budget, and then I think we need to get really serious and look at what the projects are, how much they cost, and make our decisions. I agree with you 100%.
Correct. In our budget, we approve our capital as part of our, we approve one budget every year, and it includes our capital. So maybe for next year, I mean, we obviously, we're not going to have a capital discussion tonight.
Right.
And we'll have it at a separate time. But I think going forward for the next budget, we should plan and do one budget.
I agree. A lot of the
Thanks, Mr. Horner.
much appreciated, Mr. Horner. A lot of the capital we put in, and I actually, we're trying to do something that other communities do, and I know Joe has mentioned it in the past, is get a 5-year plan, which I don't think has ever been done. Looking on past capital projects, there's stuff listed that never gets done.
Well,
So
we have
is
a
everyone
priority
here-
A, priority B, and what does that really mean? I think we should look at it over terms of 5 years.
Are we all on the
and-
fiscal year, calendar year budget system here?
No.
What are you on?
Our budget starts June 1st. And I think yours
I'm
does
June,
as
yeah.
well. Village budgets are not on the calendar year, city budgets are.
So how do we get on the same page? Because we need to budget, the city would need to budget the end of this year for next year.
Well, we have to do the capital planning exercise that Mr. Horner spoke about
Yeah.
before,
do it even
so
before
you can
that. We need to
allocate
do
it
it
in your
before June.
municipal budgets.
There are
because
certain,
our wish list doesn't advance because
excuse me,
nobody wants
Dennis,
to pay.
there are certain things on this list that we're looking to purchase in 2017, such as
So what?
the
yeah,
pipe below the duck pond bridge,
er,
the new camera and security system, the
Everything-
network upgrade. Those are things we're looking to do this year. When we get to the
we-
bathroom roofs, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, we have $190,000 for the main roof. And that's probably maybe underestimating. We have the seawall estimated here. Now, we know that's not coming out of our
Not this year.
cash reserves, and we know that we're going to have to pass another resolution regarding that. So, this is a guide for us. I think that you can look at some of the work on the proposed capital projects, such as buying garbage pails and rescue boards and a sink in the first aid building. I think those are definitely things that are going to be done. The other things.
So can we? So it's hard to see from this list. I know that the item after this, we're gonna propose to hire Lisa Easton and really make a very specific capital plan list. But it's hard to see from this what we want to do this year and what we don't. So, and maybe we're gonna not decide this tonight so we can get it, talk about it
hope not.
another. Sorry. And I just want to ask, since Mrs. Horner isn't here to ask it, what about the bathrooms? Why aren't they on here?
There,
We're discussing that with,
That is,
we're discussing that with Lisa Easton.
right.
I'll
And
get
that,
to that
and
in
that
a
will
minute.
absolutely be a priority. And I have assured Mrs. Horner that as soon as the weather turns and it's good enough to go down into the bathrooms, we are going down there and we're going to look at what we can do about making them more pleasant. And certainly, they've always been clean, but they will,
Wanna vote on
will
the
be
budget?
putting a really serious look at that.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the budget?
So moved.
Second, the operating budget, yes? Yes.
Correct.
Wait. I know everyone hates me because I stop, but I'm still on the extended hours thing. So we're sort of putting in a provisional $20,000, but we really haven't decided if we're doing that or the hours, or we have. What am I want to know what I'm approving if I approve the budget related to that item.
This
The
budget has
extended hours,
$20,000
$20,000.
for extended lifeguard hours.
But we are
And
going
we've-
to.
And you've also passed the fees to support
Right, we passed the
it.
fees, but at some point, we're going to discuss what those hours are going to actually be.
Yeah, we haven't decided last.
Yes, we will have a discussion about park rules and all of these things, either next month or the following month.
And Mr. Chair, I would suggest that irrespective of, like, if we went to an 8 o'clock end for the swimming, which probably makes sense if you want to close the beach proper at 9, because people have to get off the beach, et cetera, the lifeguards would probably stay on for a duration thereafter anyway. So from a budgeting perspective, it's not going to be more than 20. So we're probably okay for our decision-making tonight, but separately, how you adjust the operating parameters of the beach, et cetera, that could be a separate discussion within the available budget.
All right. We've had a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Killian,
Yes.
Commissioner Sack,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Pilla,
Another enthusiastic yes.
Commissioner Salanitro,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuckerman.
Yes. All right. We have a discussion and possible resolution to retain Lisa Easton as preferred architect. We've been trying to get hold of Lisa, and most of you know her. Okay. Commissioner Rosenberg is taking his leave.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Lisa had done considerable work on the park
Good night. Get home safe.
before, especially on the administration building. We've been trying to get hold of her, and I think the most important aspect was the fact that once again, we had gotten a call from FEMA. We received from FEMA $10,000 to repair the roof on the main bathhouse. And apparently, the money was never spent. We also got some insurance money, but the bathhouse is in terrible need of repair.
Wait, so we received money that was never spent? Where is that reflected in our budget?
Presumably, that was revenue
in
that came
capital
in several years ago. It's sitting in the bank.
Where is that accounted for, though? Not in the budget we just approved. Shouldn't there be like a fund balance that shows that we have money in the bank?
I would think it's,
Please come up. I know, you thought you got away.
So close. You have only one bank account, so the money is sitting in that bank account, and the balance would have been in a surplus.
Where in the budget that we just approved is that indicated? What
Bank
line?
account? It's not. The budget is only reflecting revenue and expenses,
All right, well, I mean, the
cash.
City of Rye's budget is about yay thick, and we have sections that include various funds, including
Our fund
undesignated fund
balance.
balance and reserve funds and designated funds. So I think that if we do have money in the bank, unless you had just said that, no one would have any reason to know or understand that we have money in the bank. So I think there ought to be some sort of
This-
indication somewhere that.
That would be on a
well,
balance sheet.
the books have never been kept that way. That doesn't mean that they can't be kept that way in the future. We're being fully in support of that, because every time I get a correspondence from FEMA, we go looking for where that money came in and where it went out.
So, I mean, you probably know what it, but so maybe we need to add a third thing to this, is what our reserve funds are and the surplus and where the money's going and what of it, whatever the total is, and then whatever of it is set aside for whatever the $10,000 we got or whatever it is, that if we, and then end up spending that money, that comes out of there.
that's.
Designated fund balance, whatever. So I'm sure you have all the information, you probably just haven't,
Yeah,
so
Mr.
maybe
Chair,
we.
That sounds like it's a part of the capital planning, like,
Yeah.
to
Well,
do
it's
this.
also part of your audited financial statement.
Yeah, no, but I mean, as it
All
relates
of
to our
that is in
agenda
the financial
tonight.
statements. It's
I'm
not,
sorry?
I said all of that is in the financial statements. That's not hidden money. It's just not,
Right.
Yeah.
it's just not in the budget.
But if we don't, so tonight, it doesn't impact our operating
No,
budget, for
no,
instance, that we're
no.
about to approve. We didn't vote on it yet, did
All
we?
right,
Oh, yeah,
can-
we did.
All right, can I
But-
finish my story?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I finish
You
my
don't let me
story,
talk
please?
tonight, what? No, but.
The story is why Lisa Easton, why we engage.
we want to pilot extending lifeguard hours. Let's spend a little of the $250,000 we saved last year on that pilot and then reassess it in a year. Thus, you are actually being smart governing, smart budgeting, and not just always looking to spend more money. You have $250,000 sitting in the bank. So let's pilot the extended lifeguard hours this year. Reflect on it every year, see how it works. Look at what we bring in, come back next year and decide if that's something we want to permanently add to the budget. And not having that conversation says to me, you're not paying attention to your full budget. It bothers me. And
That money you're talking about is dedicated to a specific project. It's not slush money.
No, but the surplus from last year and the,
Sorry, you're talking about the grant money? That, oh, I'm sorry.
no, just the money sitting in the bank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's supposed to go towards capital. That's gonna be part of our capital discussion.
So that's a line in the financial statement, so it's not really a capital budget, but it's.
We wanna use it for that.
Right.
No, well, we wanna
Yeah,
use it
we-
towards
we-
capital.
We know that the
That's
money is there.
dedication for it.
What we're doing tonight is doing a yearly budgeting for this year. Now, many communities, in fact, all communities, I'm sure the city of Rye does it, town of Rye does it, Portchester, Rybrook. In their budgets, what you get down to is what the tax levy will be. At the bottom line, the tax levy will be X. Boards, councils, at some point looking at what their tax levy would be, say, we don't want the tax levy to be so large. What we're going to do is take money from our fund balance in such and such a fund or that fund or the other, and we're going to apply that to the expenses, which will decrease the fund balance, but will keep the tax levy lower. Rytown Park Commission does not have a tax levy.
Well, it is, it's the fees, that's the tax levy.
Well,
But it's the
yeah.
same. It's the same. It's the
Yeah,
same
but
idea.
it's
But
not-
Jer-
it's not technically-
She's basically saying take it out of that and
Right.
don't put it in your
But it's
operating.
not, it's not the same thing as another community
Covers
does.
the deficit, yeah.
Russ, you are correct. We have not had that discussion.
Mr. Chair, that, actually, just to make a quick comment, so for people at home who can't maybe hear because of the mic, members of the audience are questioning whether we could have used the surplus from the budget, which sounds like it's in undesignated fund balance to cover some of these operating expenses. That's, from a government accounting perspective, that's actually a no-no. Like, undesignated or designated, fund balance should not be used for operating expenses, except if it's the recession in 2008 kind of a thing.
Well.
But your point about it being a pilot
Yes,
is well taken, but you know, we have it covered on the revenue side, I would suggest, and this isn't to perpetuity. We could always change our mind or adjust the hours.
Okay, listen, right, we know the money's there.
Last
That'll be
point
in the
though,
minutes.
and
Debbie-
I know
Debbie
this
Reisner's gonna
is,
put it
I
in
know
the
we're on a
minutes.
huge tangent, but it sounds like the next step in our progression, our maturity, would be to take some of the stuff in undesignated fund balance, like the money for the roof, and move it into a designated fund so we don't accidentally spend it on something we're not supposed to.
Like a capital.
I think we need to. I think we need to have a policy on that and decide what does happen with our surplus and does it all go to capital? Does it?
think
But
that-
but when we talk more about capital, we can talk about that.
I think that's a discussion for another night.
Correct.
Yes.
Right now, we are talking about hiring Lisa Easton, and I was,
Hey,
okay.
take advantage of that.
I'm going to
Lisa's
take
gonna
advantage
organize
of
it
that.
all
Roll
for
with
us.
it.
Lisa is an experienced architect with considerable work having been performed at Rytown Park, and she's going to, her main task is to help us deal with the FEMA problem at the main bathhouse, to also look into the, let's call it the bathroom situation and related in the administration building, and help us restore Rytown Park to its former glory. Okay. With that, may I have a motion and a second?
I make the motion.
I'm,
I did.
yeah, he
I
did.
made the motion. Benny seconds.
Yeah.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Killian.
Yes.
Commissioner Sack.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg, absent. Commissioner Pilla.
Yes.
Commissioner Salanitro?
Just want to also add that Lisa is a historical preservation architect and has helped this commission with grants. So she has brings a special flair to the sensitivity of the history and the architecture of the park. I vote yes.
That 1.4 in the bank is from Lisa, actually, right? She helped us with.
Commissioner Zuckerman?
Yes. Public comment on non-agenda items.
Next.
They said it all.
Okay? That's been said. Park management report.
Everything's great. Next.
We can read it. We
It's
read it.
submitted.
Bill Lawyer, it's been submitted in writing. The one thing that Bill was going to add is, as you've seen from your packet, the NYU Wagner Capstone team is marching forward with their project. The survey of stakeholders is live online and getting responses. We have had so
Too
far.
many lots from Rye, so Rye Neck and Mamaroneck, or Rye Neck and
Right.
Portchester and Rybrook, please.
We've had 429 people taking this survey so far, of which 317 from the city of Rye, 23 from Rybrook, 34 from Portchester, 17 from Rye Neck, 23 from other, 4 from White Plains, 4 from Harrison, 1 from Eastchester, Scarsdale, 1 from Mount Vernon, 2 from Larchmont, and 1 from Amerenik.
Do you guys,
So,
you
we
guys
have
send
some
it out
work
on
to
your
do.
listservs, right?
We don't have one.
Paul's not here,
Paul
right?
does. Paul, yeah, it was
And
sent out.
Dennis, do you also? Do you have a listserv
We
to
don't
the
have
residents?
maybe we could actually.
I
I'll make-
did send it to
We
Chris
sent it out
Steers
to
and-
everyone we send our agendas to, which is a lot of people.
I did send it to Steers, and Steers said he'd look into it.
Do you, did you send it to me also? Just, I'm looking through my inbox
Of
actually now.
course.
You probably did, right?
Yes. If I wrote to Chris Steers, I definitely wrote to you.
Yeah. Okay, oh, cool. I will blast it out on Facebook.
But everybody, please, you've all received the e-card. It was in the packet as well, and please forward it.
Okay. Next item, resolution appointing a FOIL officer.
So moved.
We're good at
I
this.
think that there needs to be a FOIL appeal officer too. So Debbie, if you're going to be the FOIL officer, Jeff, you probably need to be the appeal officer.
I was going to raise that issue, Joe. Should we have a single person as the appeal officer, or should the entire commission?
Oh, no,
No,
you
no,
do
no,
not
we've
want
done
that
that.
job.
We've done that in
No,
Rye
no,
City.
no, no.
No,
You
no,
do
no, no,
not
no,
want that job.
In Portchester, we use the attorney.
No, because there's a time period with which you have to respond, and then if we can't all get together, we tried it in Rye. It was a disaster.
Yeah, no, and there's a legal aspect to the determination.
And our
Legal-like
attorney
aspect.
always has to get involved
Yeah.
anyway, so he might as well. Jeff,
Yeah.
we
Sorry, Jeff.
trust
Feel
you.
about that, Jeff? All right. So let's add a last paragraph. Resolved that the RTPC hereby designates Commission Attorney Jeffrey Binder as the appeal officer. And whatever else you need to write in there. Okay?
So moved.
Second on the agenda and the amendment, sure.
All in
Please
favor?
call the roll.
Roll call? Okay.
Commissioner Killian,
Yes.
Commissioner Sack,
Yes.
Commissioner Pella,
Yes.
Commissioner Salanitro,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuckerman.
Yes.
I move to cancel the February 21st meeting.
Sure you want to do that? All in favor of canceling the February 21 meeting?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Benny, you can come all by
Never
yourself.
said no before. I mean, it felt weird.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
What's the last name of, I know.